Welcome one and all. It's time for quite possibly the hottest, spiciest Kings of War tournament report of all time. Clash of Kings 23, the largest Kings of War event ever held in the history of the universe. Around about 150 players in Nottingham to play Kings of War. People coming from all over the world to join in, and 6 games across 2 days of non-stop red-hot gaming action. So, as you can see from the thumbnail here, the Abyssal Dwarfs are heading to the Clash of Kings yet again, and I'm quite happy with the list going into the event. Got a lot of defense 6, a lot of ability to heal that defense 6, but it is a list that has some weaknesses, which I'll go over in a moment before we get to the games. So if anyone's watching this live, feel free to comment along, and if you're watching this later, then why not drop a comment below as well. And if you're not liking this video, what kind of heathen are you, honestly? So, let's get rid of the thumbnail and look at my army. So, as you can see, lots of rocks. Say hello to Mr. Giant Orange Arrow to guide your eyeballs to points of interest for the next several hours, possibly. We'll see. It's 6 games and it is Clash of Kings. There's going to be deep probing analysis going on here. Could take a while. So, I will go through my list, which, you know what, I know it so well because I've just been playing with it for 6 games in a row that I don't even need to look at it. I can just tell you what's in the list just from staring at the models here and telling you exactly which upgrades they have. So, we have a Greater Obsidian Golem up there. We have 3 hordes of Lesser Obsidian Golems. This is 2,300 points, by the way, standard Kings of War. And these 3 Golem hordes all have some kind of item to heal themselves with in some way. So one of them has Healing Brew, one of them has the Sanguinary Scripture, which gives them life leech 1, and one of them has the Aegis of the Elohai, which gives them Iron Resolve 1. So they all have ways to get their wounds back in some form or other. We have a horde of Grotesques, and they have the Boots of Striding. So the Greater Golem and the Grotesques are the 2 units that I will be looking to if I need to be charging into some terrain. We have got 3 spellcasters. We've got the Hexcaster with Hex, Weakness, and the Periscope. So if there's an enemy mage, for instance, hiding behind another unit, then the Hexcaster can count himself as 1 height higher when drawing line of sight for his spells, which don't suffer from cover, those 2 spells, so it's a good little item for him, only 5 points. And not only to target mages, but also if there are multiple enemy units behind that you think are all going to be charging something, then maybe it'll allow you to see to the one behind, so quite handy. And then 2 Ironcasters, 1 with Shroud of the Saint, so he's got Heal 5 and Surge 8, and 1 with the Conjurer's Staff to reroll a spell dice, so Heal 3, Surge 8, and then also Scorched Earth. So we've got Weakness, and we've got Scorched Earth, and we've got a ton of Defense 6 units. So it's pretty obvious what the plan is here. The big wall of Defense 6 takes a hit, heals some wounds back, gets healed, and then doesn't die. As long as I can avoid being double and triple charged or getting flank charged, then it should stand up quite well to most things that are going to be coming at it. We've got a troop of gargoyles. We've got a regiment of Immortal Guard with the Orb of Towering Presence, which gives them an extra unit strength, so they are unit strength 4. They're the highest unit in the army for unit strength, which can be quite useful. And we've got Brachy Barker, the ultimate half-breed champion. So he has very inspiring, he has Dread, he has 6 attacks, he has Crushing Strength 3, so he's very tasty. And in terms of all my fighting units, so if we ignore the casters and the gargoyles, everything is either defense 6 or defense 5, and the ones that are only defense 5, for example, the Grotesques, the Immortal Guard, and the Overmaster on Ancient Winged Half-Breed, all of them who are defense 5 also have regeneration. So hopefully a very survivable list. Bart says, Andy, get some sleep. there will be no sleep until this report is in the books. So yeah, for anyone who's not been following my voyage for the last few days, on Friday I played an Age of Sigmar tournament, because I thought that would be the best preparation for Clash of Kings, and did pretty well there. Tied for first place effectively, and then went down to second place on tiebreakers from the points differential for each game. So that was good, and a very good warm-up, because I got home, immediately reported on that, went straight to bed, and then woke up again and it was time for Clash of Kings. So totally different game system, but thankfully my brain can handle it. Well, we'll see. We'll let you be the judge of that based on some of my decisions that come up over the next few games. So, the Oathmaster and Ancient Winged Halfbreed that I just mentioned has the Blade of Slashing, because he's only got 9 attacks, and if any of them miss, that is very irritating. So, we've got some more lovely pictures of my army here. What are the strengths of this army? Obviously, high defense and ability to get my wounds back. And it can hit fairly hard. Most of the units do hit on 4s though. So killing stuff isn't its biggest strength. But if you can find some nice flat ground, so they're not being hindered all the time, then you can get some good damage done with this list. And hindering the enemy before they charge the very tough to hurt units as well. So the weakness and the Scorched Earth spells. So yeah, there's an actual picture of my list to prove all that stuff I was just telling you. Now, one thing that I think I only cheated with in game 1, Bracky, I've been treating his dread as 9 inches. And I was looking through the old rules to find out why I would have been thinking that. And it's because he has the Bardoom special rule. And I don't know why that still exists as a special rule, because it's just a rule that gives him 2 other rules that all already have names. So he has Very Inspiring and Dread. But the way that used to work was that it gave him Extremely Inspiring, which was a 12-inch Inspiring. So I've obviously got that mixed up during the various changes and additions where his rules have been tweaked slightly, but they've kept the same word used. So I was thinking that he had Inspiring and Dread at 9 inches. So thankfully I did not do that all the way through the tournament, and I haven't really used him lately, so thankfully not much cheating going on. So you can see, actually you can't because it's been cut off here, but I've got, I think it's 19 unit strength in this army, so that's one of the weaknesses. Not a lot of unit strength. If I need unit strength in multiple parts of the board, that's going to be a problem. And not many scoring units either, because I've got 4 individuals in there, so I've only got 8 units that can actually score or, for example, carry tokens. So, could be a problem, because 3 of these are, of course, only 1 unit strength, all the others are 3 or 4 in that case. So, could be worse. Other issues with this army, potentially speed. I've got 2 fast flying units. I've got Bracky, who's speed 8, and the Grotesques are speed 7. Everything else is what I would consider to be slow. The Greater Golem at speed 6 is borderline, where you would consider ogres not to be particularly slow, so same as them. But the Golems, obviously Shambling at speed 5, Immortal Guard speed 4, and the casters aren't very fast. So not a lot of speed in this list. So if I come up against an army with a vast amount of fast units that can actually hit hard, that could be an issue. And the kind of lists I'm thinking about there are, for instance, ogre armies that have a lot of the chariots, a lot of ogre chariot units, because they hit very hard and they're faster than most of what I can bring here. And chucking a 300-point model in front of them isn't always the best option. So only really the gargoyles for that job. Now, when I was building this list, I did have the choice to put in a second unit of gargoyles, but I elected not to, because I liked everything else so much. I didn't want to sacrifice anything from the list. One thing I could have done is take out this big flyer and put in Susan and some more gargoyles, which would have given me an extra unit, but I'd been losing out on this guy, who is a big deterrent on the flanks, and also a big threat looking at enemy flanks, deterring them from moving forwards sometimes. So I do like to have the big flyer in there when everything else is so slow. Susan, of course, has less attacks, which is a bit more manoeuvrable, but doesn't hit as hard. And also, she doesn't have Vicious for some reason. So, game one, well, let's look at the overview first. So I think the first one is Pillage, which is where you have various tokens plopped around the table, and you have to be sitting on them at the end of the game. So I think there are 7 of them on the table here. And I'm up against Undead in round 1, so let's have a look at that list. There are 4 zombie regiments, 2 revenant hordes, Soul Reaver infantry, 2 regiments, so alarm bells going off immediately, that's definitely a danger unit there. Hitting on 3s with crushing strength 2 is something you've definitely got to watch out for. And with life leech as well, so if you've damaged them they'll be getting those wounds back. Whites, more alarm bells going off here, as they also hit on 3s with crushing strength 2. They can fly as well, and they're faster than nearly all of my units. A Vampire Lord on a horse, that can be quite scary as well. It's quite similar to a Brachybarker, for instance, but not quite as... not quite as good. Doesn't have Dread, doesn't have crushing strength 3, but he does have Duelist. So in certain specific instances, the Vampire Lord would be better. There's a Revenant King with Bane Chant, and it's got some Surge. And that Bane Chant is going to be definitely required in this matchup. Necromancer with Surge and Drain Life. So, when I'm looking through the enemy list with my particular army, what do I not want to see? I don't want to see fast units that have crushing strength 2 or higher. I don't want to see too many sources of Bane Chant. I don't want to see lots of Strider and Pathfinder. And I also don't want to see anything that doesn't care about my defense. So I don't want to see, for example, Cloak of Death that just takes a wound off you no matter what your defense is. I don't want to see Dread or Brutal, things that just effectively do an extra damage to you when calculating the nerve test. Even if you defend 6, they don't care, it's still just 1, whether you're a zombie or a golem. So anything like that that doesn't care what your defense is are the kind of rules that I'd be concerned about, because I'm paying a lot of points for that pip of nerve on the defense 6 unit, and they're just ignoring it with some of those rules. So in this one, we've got some fast units, but not a lot. It's mostly a fairly slow list, so not too concerned about that. So I'm mainly going to try to keep the Soul Reavers out of combat as much as possible, and the Whites. Those are the 3 units I'm most concerned about, definitely, because the Revenants, even though they have a lot of attacks, don't have any crushing strength, so they're going to have to be Bane Chanted if they want to have much chance of accomplishing anything. So the front line of the army is not hard hitting at all. So I have to be careful breaking through, because you may end up with Soul Reavers behind the lines. That's often what you'll see in these situations. And Whites, of course, being a flying unit, they're definitely one to go behind the lines, behind their own lines. And then down here we've got Vampire and Undead Pegasus, 2 of them. So this is quite a dangerous unit as well, because if they get flanks, they're on 14 attacks then, on 3+ with crushing strength 2. So there's no crushing 3 in the list that I can see. So that's nice, but 2 is still quite dangerous. That's the first amount of crushing strength that I would be concerned by when looking down a list with this army. So, where are the pillage tokens or objectives? So there's 1 out here, 1 there, 1 there, so 3 all down the middle. There are 2 here, and there's 1 over there, so that is 6, and there'll be another one possibly under a unit somewhere, because I think there are 7. So we'll see where the other one is at some point, but I think it might be here or over here somewhere maybe. So when we were placing the tokens, you do this before choosing sides. So my goal was to create like a box of 4 tokens, because if you hold 4 at the end of the game, that's enough to win, because if there's 7, it just makes sense. And keeping them all in one tight space like that, that's ideal for my army that doesn't want to spread out too much. I don't want, for example, things like a Vampire and a Pegasus in the last turn being able to fly away and get onto a crucial objective that I can't be holding. So if I've got them all the ones I need in the centre, that's the ideal situation for me. I've got my big wall of defense 6 with my casters between them. You'll see me set up like this if I'm not facing enemy shooting, just putting the casters between the golems. It gives them better line of sight to the enemy to cast their spells. If I'm up against shooting, I'll probably put them behind my golems so they can't be targeted. the Hexcaster, when he's being targeted by enemy spells, always gets hit on a 6. So he's a bit less vulnerable to spells coming at him. And of course they're all individuals, so they're not that easy to shoot. But it depends what you're facing. Got the gargoyles behind, ready to leap in front to block a charge, or possibly in this scenario hang back and then jump on an objective at the end. And I haven't gone for a flank with my flyer because the enemy have spread out all the way across. So I've just gone, well, somewhat to the flank, but not right up to the edge, like you'll sometimes see me do. So just moving up, the grotesques are going to go onto this hill. That's also a hill in the middle there. So grotesques on a hill, they'll be able to get extra thunderous charge if they charge off it. Not that they're going to need that much. And what's that? Is that Clash of Kings organizer Steve perusing all the tables and photobombing in round 1? It certainly is. So I've got the Immortal Guard out there on their own. And, oh yeah, I remember. So the other token is under the Immortal Guard. Yep. So there's one there, a box of 4, and one out there. So if I'm contesting all of these, and the Immortal Guard is sitting on this one, the reason I've chosen the Immortal Guard for this role, they are slow, so getting them to anything else is a bit of a challenge. So somewhere they can just sit for the whole game is a good role for them, because they don't like moving around too much, and it's not like the token's going to vanish or anything, so they can just sit there. And anything that wants to come and get them, they're not a weak unit by any means. So a chaff unit would not have a chance against them. A zombie regiment would not have a chance against them. So you have to commit something if you want to get rid of these guys. And if you wanted to just throw a unit in there to contest the objective, they're unit strength 4 with the upgrade. So you're definitely going to have to send significant resources to deal with them. Even one vampire on a Pegasus, I don't think that would be a good move to go after the Immortal Guard with a single vampire on a Pegasus. Because you can't waver them, and they're going to regenerate. And yeah, I don't think you wouldn't chew through them particularly fast. And I think there are matchups against certain units of that type that they will eventually win. I don't know about that specific one, because obviously the vampire's healing up a couple of wounds as well. But I think Vampire and a Pegasus is also more expensive than them. And if I can get an annoying enemy flyer to go and hassle them for the whole game, that's okay with me. So what I want to do is push the golems forward pretty much onto these objectives. If I hadn't been able to choose sides, by the way, then I would have set up very much the same, but I would have been probably more aggressive, because I'd want to be beyond the centre point. I'd want to be in that box rather than this box. But it was a gamble, setting up on one side as many objectives as I could, and then hope that I win the roll-off and pick this side. So I've marked on each unit of golems which upgrade they have. And there's the Shroud of the Saint Ironcaster, and there's the Scorched Earth and Conjurer's Staff one. On this side, grotesques are screening the big flyer a little bit. So over on this side, very cool, we've got Nagash surrounded by ghosts representing the whites, 2 regiments of zombies, and a necromancer. So that's not an easy little block to deal with, particularly, because if the zombies are out in front and that's the first thing you can hit, they're basically worthless, and then you get hit by the whites. So we'll see how I'm going to deal with that. It's not like I necessarily have to directly deal with it, because they're not in the area that I'm hoping to be scoring all the points at the end of the game. So if I can just deter them from coming forward and keep the whites away, I might be quite satisfied with that. In the middle we've got the Vampire and Horse, who is a bit of a threat. 2 Revenant Hordes that I'm not really concerned about at all. And we've got more zombies, Pegasus Vampire, the 2 Soul Reaver units over on this side, which I'm quite happy about. Because if you look at the wide shot, and there's zombies there as well, so they're probably going to sit on that objective all game, which they can do. It's just one objective, I'll be happy to let them have that one. The 2 Soul Reaver infantry units being here. So when they want to come into attack, there's a wall there, which is annoying for them. And it looks like this unit maybe wants to go down here, which is okay, because if they want to take a hindered charge into the Immortal Guard eventually, is going to be fine with me. Even if that's a fight the Soul Reavers eventually won, they would be out there on an objective, And would they just totally take themselves out of the game for that? Because that's one of the units that can actually do something to my army. I'd be quite happy if it was taking itself out of the game, because this is the area where it's going to be decided. So if I'm only facing things that don't have any crushing strength in the middle, that's perfect. So I don't want to give up any flanks to the Pegasus vampires, obviously. So into round 1. And I have gone first and flung most of my army forward. And if I can get the fight mostly taking place on this line of objectives here, then that means I'm in a good position to hold these two as well. Obviously I don't want to be fighting the whole game back here and just beyond the objectives. So fighting around here sounds pretty good to me. The Immortal Guard have just moved forward a little bit, so you can actually see where there's an objective now. Flyer on the hill. It's not going to get any bonus from being on the hill, but it's going to have a good view of the battlefield and the grotesques as well if anyone wants to charge, or come into charge range, should I say, because they've got the boots of striding. So if someone wants to drop in here, for instance. Now, I'm going to see what my opponent does in reaction to this, because obviously if things like the Revenants start pushing up and leave themselves open to charges from these two perhaps, then we'll see if I want to take that on. Not hoping to get the Whites into combat, not hoping to get the Soul Reavers in combat either, so depending on how my opponent moves, I'm going to try and react and not let those 3 units into the game, because I see them as the key to me suffering damage. So not much going on in round 1. Turn 1 for the Undead. So they have advanced with most of the units, and Pegasus behind the zombies there, which is keeping it nice and safe. Soul Reavers coming this way, which again I'm a big fan of, because there's a house there, and if the game's taking place here and they're walking round, the reason I've brought the Immortal Guard there actually is to just make them think twice about maybe coming round and trying to look at the flank. Because even if it's a hindered charge from the Immortal Guard, if I end up maybe flanking them, they wouldn't like that very much. So give them something to think about while I'm also holding the objective. And Revenants just keeping a nice solid line there. They're not going to get flanked anytime soon. And there's that transport system for the Whites of the 2 zombie regiments, one of which I assume is going to go straight for this objective and just sit there. So what am I going to do? What would you do in this situation? There's a duelist vampire there, which is also why Bracky is at this end of the table and not there, because he doesn't want to face that. And on to my turn 2. So if you predicted that I would charge both zombie regiments, then you'd be right. I did not use the Boots of Striding because I do not want to kill them, which sounds like a really weird thing to say, but he doesn't have many attacks and the grotesques are hindered, so they're hitting on 5s. So I didn't want to kill these units, and I think on average I probably shouldn't kill them in one go with being hindered and only having 9 attacks there. So 5 and 6, because if I kill them, someone gets hit by the Whites. The Whites are quite capable of killing one of these units in one go with a bit of luck. And if I kill one of the units, so if I killed this one, for example, then the Whites, who can then fly, could probably hit this guy, and then the zombies back into the grotesques, which means that if he were to get killed, then the grotesques wouldn't be able to immediately counter and charge into them. So losing 1 unit, or killing 1 unit, could have been quite bad, but killing neither of them is fine because the Whites are still kind of locked there. They can't really participate too much here, because there's not a lot of space there if the zombies want to countercharge, and it's not like they can go sideways. So yeah, they're kind of stuck, which is good. I like that. They do have some options, but we'll see what my opponent does in that situation in a minute. Everything else just pushes up into the middle, into this area that I said I kind of want to be fighting on. Gargoyles hanging back, so they'll either sit on this objective till the end of the game, or if something comes up that I really need to block, they'll just fly out and block it. So, the position you can see here, these golems have a Pegasus vampire in their flank, and he can see them. So, to deny the Pegasus the ability to land, I've put Brachybarker, who cannot be seen by the Pegasus, behind the greater golem there, who is obscuring view to Brachy, and Brachy is blocking anything from landing in the flank here. So it could charge in, touch the flank, but then it would have nowhere to land, because all these units are perfectly lined up, and it can't land at the back because Brachybarker's there, so it can't hit the corner and then appear there as a charge, if you see what I mean. So Brachy is just protecting that flank. It's a bit of a weird situation, but that's how it is. There's not enough space for the base to fit in there, so it would have to be at the back. So Brachy is doing the job of stopping that happening. We've got the Hexcaster looking between there. I don't think he can actually see anything at the moment. He might be able to see the Pegasus. That might be taller than the golems, so I think he might be able to see that. My other two casters, they don't want to pop out because they don't want to get charged by the vampire, really. Because it's all very well that if a vampire charges between golems, I can surge into it, but if he kills one of my casters, that's one less thing to actually do the surge with, and surge is more of an inconvenience to use when you've got other spells available to you as well. So if you're forcing someone to surge, then that means they are not then casting Scorched Earth on you, they're not healing their troops. So even if you can't avoid being hit by the enemy, if you make them do it with a surge, just stop them being able to use their other spells. So that's a valid strategy. So that's how the battlefield is looking. What would I like to happen here? Well, this vampire, obviously it would be great if he just wildly charged into one of the golem hordes, but that would be very silly of him. I wouldn't be too disappointed if he charged into the grotesques, because he's going to be hindered. And that gets him away from the action, because this is where it's going to be decided. Some of these units, they don't really have a chance of killing any of my Defense 6 units. But if they have, for example, a Pegasus, or some Soul Reavers, and a Vampire all charging in together, suddenly it gets a bit spicy. So, if the Vampire gets drawn over there, not necessarily a bad thing. On to turn 2 for my opponent, and I just took a picture of the... This is the primary gaming hall. This is where most of the tables were, and I think it was 148 players in the end. There were a few dropped out towards the build-up of the event. There's another room off camera behind this that had some more tables in it, and then there were 2 tables on a big stage where one of them was being live streamed at all times. So even more tables than are in here. So the vampire does go in, and the zombies both go back in as well. Now, here's an interesting point for the zombies. If you want these zombies to survive, and you're in this situation, you probably don't countercharge, because if the grotesques have to make a fresh charge against you, they're going to be hindered by this bit of terrain. Now in this instance it's zombies, you probably don't care about them, but if you're trying to hold something up, then just look around before you countercharge and decide whether countercharging a unit that you're not going to kill is just going to make it easier for them to kill you. Would be my advice. So we'll see what they get accomplished there. And yeah, the Soul Reavers coming up. Oh, you can see I've moved my Mortal Guard back again, actually. Just making sure they're out of charge range of this unit. If they are going to hit me, I don't want to give them pretty much the whole game to kill me. I want to drag it out a bit. And what's this? We've got Revenants storming into action. Both units go in. And the zombies go in as well. So those zombies go in here. Revenants, one in there and one in there. Now, this isn't necessarily the worst move, because you've got a big solid line here against my big solid line. So if you're confident in your flank abilities, and all you want to do is just hold up my lines by keeping a perfectly straight line so I can't flank any of your units, then that's fine. But they're not really going to do much damage. Now, the damage units are going to come over here, because we've got the... There was a wall there, so the Soul Reavers went in, and one of the vampires on a Pegasus went in as well. Not this one, because this one couldn't charge anyone, or didn't want to charge any of the units that it could charge. So we've got 2 powerful units into the Greater Golem, who is the one I would like you to be charging if you've got lots of powerful units, because he's got higher nerve and he's lower unit strength as well, which can be important for objectives and whatnot and controlling area later. We've got a nice upside down picture. 2 in a row, 3 in a row. How did I miss those when I was editing my images? So you'll see that the grotesques take 10 damage from the vampire and the zombies. That is amazing, and they get wavered. And yeah, we've just got a whole string of upside down pictures there. That's wild. 5 damage on the golems, 3 damage on the golems from the revenants, which is not bad actually, because they don't have any crushing strength. I think this one was Bane chanted, which is why they're able to do a bit more. And yes, that's how it looks at the end of that turn. So the grotesques being wavered is quite an inconvenience, but it does make up my mind about one thing, and it's time to abandon this flank. So not only does this keep the whites pinned, this move here, it also puts my flyer in a good position, because you'll notice the flyer took 0 wounds from the zombies. If it had taken wounds, I would have had to stay there and fight, probably. As it stands, though, because he didn't take wounds, he can still fly. So what I'm going to do is turn this way and just whoosh, swoop over there, out of harm's way, far enough to get out of sight of the whites, and just leave the grotesques and say, see you guys, deal with it. Because, like I said, this is the area that's going to decide the game, and keep those whites out of the action as long as possible. So, fly away, spend a turn threatening the enemy, and then next turn, probably have a rear charge on something. So, here we go. Flown away. The grotesques can't do much except regenerate some of their wounds, so they're going to get hit by a few things next turn, of course. And here's another important thing here. So, when you've got a big flying monster like this, try to avoid presenting your front to a fighty individual, because we've got the vampire there, and we've got the Revenant King, who is on foot, so he can't charge me because he's not in range. But if you let a fighty individual charge you in the front, it's likely to do a wound, and then you can't fly, and you've got an individual in front of you stopping you getting away. If you make them charge you in the flank or the rear, then even if they damage you, okay, you can't fly, but they're not blocking your movement, so you can still go forwards. And turning your flank or rear to an individual doesn't get them any extra attacks. So that would be a hot tip. So, obviously I've been dishing out some wounds on these units here, but not a huge amount, because the golems only hit on 4s, and these guys have got good nerve. I do kill the zombie regiment quite easily, and I also, hold on, you'll see that the other Pegasus eventually flew over and moved there. So I kill this Pegasus with a double charge from the Greater Golem and Bracky. Bracky then backs up an inch because he doesn't want to get charged and overrun by anything if they get a lucky streak and kill him. And another thing here, the gargoyles have flown into this position. So where were they? Let's go back. Gargoyles were here. They've flown over here. And the reason being, similar to what I was describing before, this unit is currently in the flank of the Greater Golem. But because of that building, they won't be able to fit into the flank. So, my understanding is that they now cannot charge the Golem. Now, if you're purely using units to prevent them charging anything, then you're not allowed to do that. Last I checked, there was something specifically in the rules that says you can't put a unit in a position where it should be able to charge, but can't because your unit's frontages are weirdly overlapping, so it physically can't fit into any of the spaces. You've got like a spiral of units going around it that are all slightly overlapping, so none of them are wide enough for you to charge them. You can't do that, or at least you couldn't last I checked. But if it's partly caused by terrain, then it's fair game. So, because of the gargoyles here, they can't charge them in the flank, because they'd hit the corner, and then the spot they have to be in has to be beyond the house. So because of the house, they can't physically fit in there. So if anyone knows that that also shouldn't be allowed, let me know, because this is the way that I've been assuming is correct. So they're going to have to back up this turn. And you can see here that the gargoyles made sure that they were not in the line of sight of the Soul Reavers there. Don't want to just give them an easy meal. And in the centre here, looking okay, done some damage, got the big flyer lined up ready to strike. And time for turn 3. Okay, turn 3 for the undead now. So, there is a double charge available here now because these guys can fly, so these zombies get out of the way. 2 units into the front of the grotesques, vampire into the back of the overmaster. And in the middle, Soul Reavers back up. These 2 units go back into fight again. And these Soul Reavers are heading over here. Now, what alarm starts going off in your head when you see Soul Reavers in this position? What it says to me is, you would like to be surged into by this guy. And depending on the precise positioning, he may well end up being able to surge them in the flank. But there's nothing in front of him stopping him from doing this, because they've backed up. So the gargoyles are going to have to get out of the way for that to happen, obviously. So in here, the Pegasus, the surviving one, has gone back into this unit, which also means that a surge may be into that flank if I can't see it already as an option. But I think this unit is more pressing, so if I could surge into them, even if it ends up in the front and don't kill them, maybe these ones would come in and kill me, but it's 2 really powerful units kind of stuck over here then, which I'm okay with. So let's see if any damage is dished out. The grotesques take some more wounds, and they die, which is kind of expected. And then the units in there start rotating. 4 damage on my big flyer. And some more damage chipped onto the golems, but not much. I'm just going to be healing it back. Just 1 from the Pegasus. So, I'm going to have a rear charge with my big flyer now into this horde. So that should be dead. Turn 4. So, yep, dead horde. This one's getting right up there as well. Because this unit does some more damage. This unit does some damage to the Pegasus Vampire along with Bracky. And I did get the surge, and it was into the flank. That was a possible surge option there. Got into the flank of the Soul Reavers, killed them, and turned around to face the other unit. The gargoyles flew off down here to just sit near this objective. I did ponder at one point sending them over here and threatening that zombie unit, but they could just turn around and look at me, and the gargoyles won't kill the zombies before the end of the game, so they just go backwards and sit near that objective. So it's obviously looking very healthy, and I'm going to give up that objective over there and this one, but that's not an issue. The maximum you can score bonus points for extra tournament points is 5 victory points. So you get 15 for a win, 10 for a draw, 5 for a loss, up to 5 based on how much you kill, and then up to 5 based on how many victory points you got during the game. So, turn 4 for the undead. So, my big flyer couldn't get out of the charge arc or the range of the whites, so it does get hit by them and the vampire. Zombies just go onto the objective there. The other ones move in. I think they get surged, but they don't go particularly far, so they still are on the difficult terrain, which just makes them even worse. And that is a hit roll, or a wound roll. Just really bad from the Soul Reavers, and they fail to do much at all to the Greater Golem. How many wounds was he already on? Let's have a look. He was on 8 already, and then after they attacked him and did that, I think that's just 1 wound, 1 successful wound roll out of all those dice. So they don't kill him. And there were some extra 1s rolled there as well. And they waver the big flyer, which is okay, because it's keeping them held up there. They're not going to be able to see past me. And some more damage chipped onto these golems, but not enough. And yeah, so because of that, not killing the flyer, the golems now have the opportunity to charge perhaps the vampire, or the whites, or this flank. And the greater golem can go back in there. Bracky can join in as well. So turn 5 for the Abyssal Dwarves, and well, lots of things have gone. So what was here? Let's go back. So the whites and the Vampire Lord are no more. So, despite my flyer being wavered, the golems just did all the work for me. So the golems charged in and killed the vampire. And then I think my flyer had to get out of the way a little bit first. I think it went backwards. Golems went into the vampire lord, killed it, overran into the whites, and killed them for the flank. So that's really good. The golems here, I think, killed the Pegasus this turn. He's gone. The Soul Reavers are killed by the golem and Bracky there, and this unit is still clinging on to life for the moment, but they're obviously going to die soon. So yeah, it's looking very good. And turn 5 for the undead, there's not much they can do. Zombies into golems, it's not going to affect them too greatly, is it? And a hero, I think this is the White King, goes into my Overmaster there, but not going to do much. So turn 6, seeing if we can mop up, and I double one the zombies, which is quite funny with this double charge here, and get rid of the final horde, which has been battling away all game. So yeah, the zombies are still alive there, those are still alive, so my opponent did get 2 victory points. I've obviously got loads because the gargoyles flew off to this one, and the greater golem, I think I surged him over to this one. So I've got all those 4 and the 5th, so 5 maximum points. I didn't quite get maximum kill points. I think if I'd killed that zombie unit, that would have been enough to get it, possibly. But just 1 off maximum, I think that. And pretty happy with that. That's pretty much how this army is designed to work. The big centre is just really tough to crack, and as soon as they get a sniff of any kind of flank or a surge opportunity, take it, and then if I ever get possession of a flank while my rock hard centre is intact, then you're in trouble. Because units like the Overmaster here, or even the golems, because they can be surged quite handily into flanks, then you should be very concerned. So, yeah, nothing much going on here. They don't manage to kill him in turn 6 either. And that's going to be the end. So nice big juicy win, and I took pictures of various armies now. I didn't take a picture of every single army because there was 148 armies. So I just went round and took pictures of any that particularly caught my eye or were laid out nicely. Some of them were probably very nicely painted, but maybe in a box or just strewn about on the table. So just the nice eye-catching ones. Eye-catching. We've got some very nice Night Stalkers here. Now this one, I believe, is the one that won the Best Army Award. And look at that. That gives me some ideas for eyeball painting. Not that I'll be able to just immediately mimic that exactly, but because painting eyeballs is one of the things I've definitely improved over the last year or so, as people will have seen on my Night Stalkers, but I'm clearly not at that level yet. Whether I ever will be is debatable. But you can see, just as a nice close-up, you can kind of see how it's done almost. You can see where the colours are, because at a distance you just think that's a natural-looking eyeball. When you get really close up, you can think, yeah, I could try and kind of imitate certain parts of this in my own technique, try and take something away from it. So we'll see if I can up my eyeball game even more. And lots of really cool stuff, very creative. Lots of terrain on the bases, very, very nice and spicy. Custom tentacles on the Mind Screech. And pretty much everything is customised in some way. And yeah, just very nice army. And this army as well is ridiculously good. Also very eye-catching. This one has lots and lots of customization going on. Perhaps the most of any army there. These are the goblin troll bodies with lizardy heads put on them. And this is the one army where you look at it and it's, would I say it's the most like a work of art? Perhaps, because it does have a bit of whimsy to it. It's not like gritty, realistic. I think this one, if you like look at the eyeballs, for example, there's some real disturbing realism going on there. This army is just a bit more whimsical, perhaps, but equally ridiculously good. especially this guy. I mean, look at those scales for a start. And even the fur there. It's walking through a gaming hall, you see this army, it's going to grab you. It's got nice, striking colours. Very nice indeed. Another ridiculously nice unit there. I took a quick picture of the prize table with the world's largest wooden spoon, which I'm hoping to avoid, of course, and the best team medals there, and some painting awards. Some more pictures. I grabbed some pictures of various Night Stalkers just because, see, I've played them a lot lately, so wanted to see what everyone else was doing with them. Some Basileans there on a nice bit of castle that caught my eye. Some Dwarfs. Some Salamanders. Very nice Northern Alliance here with some of the new models. And the one thing that perhaps I like the most about this army is the fact that the new dwarf heads that you get with these birds have been used on the infantry. It may be the entire torso, actually. So they look much better than the other dwarves that you can get from Mantic, I think. Except maybe the Vanguard ones are very nice. I don't know if they've got a new dwarf range beyond that. And here we've got a load of trees. So obviously caught my eye because it's trees. I have no idea if they're well painted under there. I didn't look that closely. I just saw trees and took a picture. They do look pretty good anyway, though. We've got some more all-natural nature tree fest going on here. Some nice striking lava abyssals. We've got, I'm not 100% sure what this army is. Could be Basileans. If those are maybe Elohai. We've got some more nature. Now I took a picture of this one because you see a lot of air elementals in there. And I think it's mainly the greater one people are hoping gets a bit of a nerf, but lots of cool models in there. More Abyssal Dwarves. So there were a few Abyssal Dwarf armies. I think there were 6 there at this event. So this one is obviously quite similar to mine. It's got the same number of golems. It's got the big flyer. It's got gargoyles. It's got some ironcasters. But it's also got, I think these are Abyssal Dwarf Berserkers. I think it's got Basusu and some half-breeds as well. So it's a little bit different. This has got a bit more speed than mine. And yeah, it's got speed, but still the solid centre. So I'll be interested to see where that one finished. We've got some Rattos. We have got some... Are they goblins? You know what? I can't even tell from that picture I've taken. Oh, I think they're Rift-Forged Orcs. Yeah, they are. Yeah, there's the shrine and the flying dudes. Zombies, zombies, zombies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 big zombie units. One of them being a legion. And zombie trolls and a few heroes. That is a lot of zombies. Goblins. I took a couple of close-ups of some of the armies where I thought they deserved a bit of extra scrutiny. Some dwarves here. These are one of the other top painted armies. And yeah, this one, the two I showed you earlier that I was kind of raving about how good they are. This one is definitely in that bracket. I would say this one is probably the best technically painted army that was there. So if you were to zoom in on any of these models, I think you'd find essentially perfection. It's like technical supremacy. So yeah, if you were judging purely on technical painting and mastery of the art, I think this one would probably win. The reason the other two maybe stand out more than this one, actually, is the fact that the colour schemes and the weirdness maybe grab you a bit more than this one. Obviously they're on cobbles, and the crystals do catch the eye a little bit, so they're a nice bit of break-up of the colour in there. But in general, there are certain armies that catch your eye from across the room, this is one that catches your eye up close, certainly. There are other colour schemes that grab you from further away, but when you get up close, this is definitely top-notch. More Night Stalkers. We've got some... This looks like... Who would that be? Would that be... I'm not entirely sure. Brotherhood, maybe? Or Green Lady? One of those. There's all kind of weird army lists. Got some rat slaves. And I don't even know what this army is. I just took a picture of it because it's got leaves sticking out of everything and flock on everything. Just thought it looked very cool. And we've got some, I assume these are Basileans, with some Phoenixes. Got some, these Halflings or Basileans or something? I can't tell. Could be Kingdoms of Men, League of Rordia or something like that. Can't really tell, but it looks cool. Some Ogres. Got some Northern Lions. I think we're coming towards the end of the pictures now. Got some more Northern Lions with more of the birds. We've got some Nature, I think. Is it Nature or would it be Sylvan Kin, perhaps? Not sure. These are Halflings. We've got some Goblins. We've got some Trident Realms. We've got some Dwarves. Got some more Halflings. More Halflings. This Iron Beast here is very nice. The shading on it, top notch. Yeah, you see it. I even took a picture of it because I was so impressed. Look at that. Very nice. That's definitely one of the best looking units. I think maybe if this one had a more like exciting base style, perhaps this one would have been definitely in contention for winning an award. Just look at that. Very nice. And I've got a video here of one of the armies because it's covered in LEDs. So look at that, a big screen inside the castle at the back there. So I thought that deserved a little video. We've got some Undead, or probably Empire of Dust actually, this one. Very nice. The reason this one grabbed me is because it's very, very, very Jason and the Argonauts, which is the kind of skeletons that I approve of. So, on to the next round, and it's an Abyssal Dwarf off. Look at this. So it's a very different list though. So this one has a Horde of Black Souls with Hammer of Measured Force. So, they also have Iron Resolve D3. So Hammer of Measured Force is obviously something that I don't like to see in a list because I'm relying on my high defense a lot. 3 regiments of Decimators, which is something I don't have. I've never particularly rated Decimators, but we'll see how they do in 3s. 12 attacks, and they've got a decent shot on them. So we'll see how they do in this game, and that could inspire me to use mine if they do well. 2 Gargoyle Troops. Now, I do think 2 is the sweet spot for Gargoyles, but in this particular list I'm running, I just didn't feel I could justify dropping out any of the other stuff to bring in a second unit. But at a higher point level, a second unit of Gargoyles is definitely the first thing that comes in, because they are very good, very useful, and very evil. 2 half-breed regiments, one with Boots of Striding, one with Blessing of the Gods. So one that's elite, and one that can have Strider at some point. Now, the important thing about this Scorched Earth spell that I have is that it prevents you from using Strider or Pathfinder that turn. So even if you got the Boots of Striding, you'd still be making a hindered charge if you Scorched Earthed. Now, interesting, Blessing of the Gods. So, on the unit, hold on, let me see if I can find a picture. It's quite amusing. So, I don't know if it actually says it yet, but I think there's a card maybe on the unit or a piece of paper that tells you what items they have. And on the unit, I think he's got it down as like Blood of the Gods or Eye of the Gods or something like that, rather than Blessing of the Gods. So because I didn't look closely enough at the list, I didn't factor in the fact that they were going to be elite as well as vicious, because I just thought, oh, that's a different item that does something else that I don't need to worry about, because I didn't look closely enough at the actual list rather than the unit. That's quite amusing. Got 2 heavy mortars, which are another thing I don't particularly rate anymore. I think they're expensive, obviously they're not scoring, and they're not very reliable, is how I look at them. And they don't do enough damage, I feel, to warrant all those downsides anymore. Because I thought before, even they don't hit very often, but when they do, they used to do really big damage. They don't do as big damage anymore. I think because they went down to piercing 2 was quite a big deal for them. We've got the Ironcaster with Diadem of Dragonkind, which takes Fireball up to 16, which is an interesting Ironcaster combo there. Because of course, the Ironcaster, the Fireball benefits from Vicious because of the special rule, which also applies to the Fireball you gain from the Diadem of Dragonkind, which feels like something that they would possibly not want you to do. If you gain extra attacks from something, those attacks don't always gain your special rules. So I'm thinking about like Host Shadow Beast, where it's just extra attacks you gain, but it kind of has its own little profile. So the Ironcaster actually gets really good value out of taking a Diadem, because his Fireball has that extra rule on it. So those extra Fireballs you're gaining get the Vicious as well. So that's actually a very good little combo. Hexcaster, exactly the same setup as mine, Periscope, Hex and Weakness, and Basusu, who I've not been running as much lately, but obviously has been a mainstay in my army for many years. So, what is the mission? It is... I can't remember the one. I suppose I could just look in the rulebook, but it's the one, I think, is it Fool's Gold, where you flip over all the tokens at once? If it is, then it's the other one. So it's the one where you have 5 tokens each, 2 with 0, 2 with 1, and 1 with 2 written on it. You put them on the other half of the table, and then at the end of each turn, you flip over one from your side of the table to see how much they're worth. Smoke and Mirrors. Thank you to Bart there, who is in the chat, feverishly watching away, making mental notes, no doubt based on my in-depth analysis. So, Smoke and Mirrors. Now, this is a terrible scenario for my army, I think. I don't have the mobility to be all over the table and then find out the objectives are worthless and have to move. So only the gargoyles can do that, and they will die very easily. Everyone else either has to be fighting, or they're too slow to get around, like the Immortal Guard, for instance. So I have to spread out. I can't just commit to one side. Now, one thing you can do is put all your tokens that are worth something on one side, and then commit to just fighting over those, and hope that your opponent has also put a token over there as well that's worth something. And if they haven't, just accept that you'll get a draw. So, I'm suspecting that my opponent has put expensive tokens on this side of the table, because all the hard-hitting stuff is over here. The 2 regiments of half-breeds, and there's just a gun line on this side, so they're obviously not planning to advance towards these objectives. I've put, I think the 2-pointer is there. I've put a 1-pointer there, and maybe there. And there's a 0 there, and a 0 over here, maybe. But I think during this game, right early on, there was a fire alarm in the building, so everyone had to evacuate, and then by the time we came back, I'm sure some people forgot where they'd put their tokens. So I wasn't 100% sure. So up against the Decimators, I would like to get Bracky into one of them, because he can hold them up, stop them shooting, and then grind through them. How many turns should Bracky take to kill a unit of Decimators, on average? Assuming that they're going to be inspired. Let's see. So, Bracky, he's probably going to get 4 hits. He's probably then going to do 4 wounds, because he's vicious. So if he does 4 wounds a turn, it takes him 2 turns to get them up to 8, which is about the point you'd expect him to kill them. So probably 2 turns of fighting if he's unhindered. If he's hindered, probably 3 turns. So a couple of turns fighting the Decimators to stop one of them shooting while everyone else gets in. I think that's a good deal. So that's his plan. He's going to go straight for one of those. We're going to totally ignore the mortars and just hope they miss, because chasing after them, I don't really have the tools to do that. So, apart from that, I had to actually start putting units over here midway through deployment, because I noticed my opponent was overloading this side and probably has expensive tokens over there. But I'm not putting anything there that is part of my big wall of death, really. I've got these 3 big units. I had to put something tough over there, though, so we've got the Greater Golem and the Immortal Guard, who can definitely stand up to some punishment, and the big flyer is really just deterrent for them advancing. So maybe they might be scared and just not come forward at all because they don't want to be charged by him. Because half-breeds are pretty squishy, so they don't want to get charged by a flyer, so they're definitely going to use gargoyles to block. There's also... what else is in the list? I think there's Infernox as well, who is the little Defense 6-13 guy with Wild Charge. And I don't think I mentioned that Bracky is also in there as well. So there's the Bracky, and there's Susan. So you can see there's a lot of juicy stuff over here, and the gargoyles. So into turn 1, and I go first, and push up. And anytime you see that some golems have gone further than others, it means that some of them have been surged. Grotesques move up onto this wall, and in this situation, I don't want to be charged, obviously, but if things like the half-breeds start advancing, then I'll be staring at their flank, so maybe pinning them back a bit. It's hard to tell how this game's going, though, because you don't know how much the objectives are worth. I've sent Bracky out here, so he's in charge range of the Decimators, but I think maybe that unit might be able to shoot him, but the others definitely won't. So he's going to be able to charge them next turn. And, yep, did a bit of surging. Over on this side, you can see how it's looking there. This bit of terrain here is, well, it can be quite useful depending how you're setting up, because it can shield your flank from certain things. And the same goes for this house. So if you're setting up your line in a long formation like that, and then you've got a house on the end of it, obviously you're just protecting your flank, which is nice. Turn 1 for my opponent. So gargoyles leap in front of the half-breeds, as you'd expect. And the Hammer of Measured Force unit. I want to stay away from them, I want to keep them out of combat. And the gargoyles have landed in front of my grotesques, which means, do I want to kill them? We'll find out. And the grotesques take some wounds from mortar fire, and then more wounds. Yeah, so the mortars get 3 out of 4 hits in the first round, do loads of damage, and they waver the grotesques. Wow, wow, wow. So that means they're not going to be charging the gargoyles at all. So it's a good job they didn't die, but now I've got the chance to retreat, regenerate, and then heal them with the Ironcaster as well. So hopefully they will be okay. We flip over some tokens, and we find a 0-point token and a 1. So the 1, this is the one on the left in front of the house, and the 0 is one I've turned over. So into turn 2 for me, and Bracky charges into the Decimators, does 3 wounds. So 1 below what I would have liked, and the golems move up as fast as they can. And I do manage to get some wounds back onto the grotesques, so that's alright. But I am concerned about the shooting now. So those mortars can definitely put on some serious pain into my army, along with the Decimators, when they get to shoot, but I've taken one of them out of the equation now, so 2 of them will be shooting me next time, before I get a chance to hit them. You can see these 2, Bracky and Susan, the gruesome twosome, have moved up alongside gargoyles, and there are going to be some charge options open to them, probably. So they don't seem too scared of this lot, so there must be some valuable objectives over here if they're really desperate to come this way. So, what's this? There's some charges going on. Bracky goes into the Immortal Guard. Gargoyles and Susan go into my big flyer. And look at all that shooting damage onto the golems. 10 wounds. Thankfully they don't manage to kill them, which is good. But they do have weakness cast on them as well by the Hexcaster. And Bracky takes 5 wounds from the Decimators, which isn't fun. And the enemy Bracky puts 4 wounds onto the Immortal Guard. My flyer takes 6 wounds. And you can see the half-breeds just chilling out just out of shot there. So they're being very aggressive here, so obviously there's something to fight for on this side, as I suspected. Gargoyles do 8 wounds. Well, they put them up to 8. They're already on a few wounds anyway. And still looking okay, but it's hard to tell because I don't know what the objectives are worth. The one that was 0, I think, was back here somewhere. The worthless one. or maybe around here. So we've revealed that that's worthless, and a 1 point objective is now flipped over there, which is here, that one. And another 0, I think, gets removed. So turn 3 for me. We've got golems into more of the decimators. So what I would like here, if we go back, so I think it's this unit gets in here. Those decimators charging into the flank of the golems would be very ineffective, because they don't fight particularly well anyway, and they'd be hindered. So charging in there, I would kind of like them to do that, because it means they're not shooting, and it also brings them closer to me, meaning more charges into them. So they probably won't do it, but if you can tempt them into taking the flank, then why not? Okay, hold on, I've gone too far now. There we go. So golems in there, Bracky back in there, and now I'm gonna put this down as a mistake. So, situation here, I killed the gargoyles, got my golems up on the hill, and I've cast weakness onto Infernox. Is it was it weakness or was it Scorched Earth? Let me see which caster is around there. So I think it's weakness. Now maybe my mistake was thinking that I'd actually cast Scorched Earth on him, because, or casting both maybe, thinking I'd done both, when really I'd only cast weakness on him. So when the gargoyles were killed by the grotesques, I overran and rolled a 6, which is obviously not great because now he's in their flank. But the reason I was doing that in the first place, I wasn't that concerned about him getting into the flank, because I thought he'd be down to hitting on 4s, and he's only got 6 attacks. So with 6 hits, probably won't wound with every single one, because he's been weakened as well. So he's probably not going to kill them, nor is he going to kill the golems. And yeah, I think I underestimated him because I kind of misremembered what I'd cast on him. So I was thinking he wouldn't be a threat to the grotesques, because obviously if he's only weakened, giving him the golems to charge in the flank is the better option, because he's not going to kill them in one go. And the grotesques can be safe. And if he wants to charge the grotesques down there, that's fine, because he's going in the front, won't kill them either. So this is definitely something he can accomplish now because of my little mistake there. So over here I do kill off the gargoyles that I was fighting, and hold on, let's just have a look what was going on over there. So the gargoyles, I think I flank them with the big guy as well, just to make sure they die. And the Immortal Guard are fighting Bracky. So I've positioned these so that if the half-breeds want to charge my flyer, this guy can see them. If they want to charge him, flyer can see them. If they want to charge the Immortal Guard, that's okay, because I care less about the Immortal Guard at this stage. They're worth less. They're going to put out more damage, less damage, should I say. And I can focus on killing Susan and then turn around and look at that stuff. We'll see though. There's definitely more enemy killing power on this side than I have, because those guys are quite significant, and the 2 heroes quite powerful. So on to turn 3, and that flank is taken, which I was still feeling fairly confident they would survive at this stage, perhaps foolishly. We've got, oh yeah, last turn I didn't mention it, but my gargoyle swooped off and just landed there because I was closing the distance and didn't want these half-breeds to charge me. So they go after the gargoyles instead, which is fine. And I think there's some pondering going on here that hasn't been fully decided on yet. So these decimators obviously do not take the bait and flank charge here. Bracky and the half-breeds decide to go into the greater golem, which is probably a good call, because there's a good chance that they won't kill him on their own. Now, if they do not kill him, this looks like a terrible move, because the Ancient Winged Half-Breed can just turn sideways and charge straight into their flank, by my reckoning. So, we'll see. If they can't kill him, that's really bad. And the golems are taking wounds from the shooting from the mortars and the decimators, and they get deleted. Yeah, so all you have to do is roll 7 twice. Done. Gone. Dead. Bracky gets wavered by decimators in combat. How embarrassing. Wow, wow, wow. So it's going to take me quite a while to get through this flank now. Obviously the golems don't take much there. And look at that. So, as long as you just keep rolling those 7s on the nerve rolls, you delete things, and he deletes the grotesques. And yeah, it's not looking great at this point now. What am I going to be able to do? Well, the golems are going to charge off the hill onto the half-breeds, because that's definitely a unit they could kill in one go. Because if they stay there, they just get hit by multiple things at once, so they're going to have to try and take something out. Bracky and the golems can still do a good job on this slot, but Bracky is obviously wavered, so he can't do it yet. My casters are going to have to think wisely about where they're throwing their spells as well. Weakening units, obviously you don't want to cast weakness on a unit with Hammer of Measured Force, that would be a total waste. So, some more damage done over here, and the Greater Golem killed as well. So yeah, with Bracky there attacking him, that means it was just a 6 twice required there to kill him. So just if you can just roll averagely with your nerve rolls a couple of times for each unit, and the fact that this unit is able to pivot means that I'm no longer able to charge them. So I'm going to have to fight Susan. So it's not looking good in the Abyssal Dwarf off. Taking so much damage from shooting is something that this list doesn't expect to happen, but when mortars hit, they can still do some damage, despite how I don't particularly rate them. So Bracky's staying out of the Immortal Guard's arc, so they can't fight next turn. And turn 4 for me. So Bracky is still wavered, so can't do much. These guys go back into the decimators and do some more wounds, but still don't kill them. I think, how much damage is that? Is that another 6? It might be. They've definitely done some good damage, but I haven't killed them though. My golems only do 6 wounds to the half-breeds. You'd expect them to do more than that. You'd expect probably 8 wounds, but alas. And I do kill Susan and turn the Immortal Guard round so they're ready to strike at these guys. And the best I can do is... Okay, so I think I didn't have space to... Let's see. So I killed Susan, and I decided, rather than rotating and facing this way, I decided to try and back away to get them in the front, I think. I think that's right. See, because, yeah, if I'm facing that way... Where was I? If I'm facing this way 100%, is that then a flank? It must have been, otherwise I would have just turned, wouldn't I? So I think I moved in such a way I was trying to get them in the front, but couldn't. Which is sad, because I don't have space to do the perfect pivot there because I'm so close to the edge of the table. So what's going to happen now? Well, the golems are about to be recharged by a unit with a Hammer of Measured Force, so they're going to die. Obviously, if they'd killed the half-breeds, they could have turned round and not been that scared. Infernox can't hit anything right now. This fight is still going on, but I'm going to eventually win that probably. And the Immortal Guard might get charged by Bracky. So, the half-breeds do get into the flank there. Bracky into Immortal Guard. And some more charges on the counter going in here. Or do they back up and shoot? Or back up and try and shoot this unit this turn? They may well do. I think they just go backwards, and the ones that can shoot do shoot this unit. Yeah, because that one got wavered. And this one didn't get disordered because Bracky was hindered. So yeah, so that goes backwards, and then these two shoot into this unit and do some decent damage. They don't kill it though. And Ancient Winged Half-Breed Overmaster is dead. Immortal Guard takes some more wounds. And Golems are dead after getting sandwiched there. And turn 5 for me. So yeah, not looking very healthy in the Abyssal Dwarf off. And the tokens which we're flipping over as time goes on, they're not really helping my case too much yet. So on my turn, you'll see that the golems and Bracky, well, how do they delete 3 units at once, you say? Well, let's have a look. So because this unit went backwards, this unit was now eligible to be hit in the flank by them. So Womp into the flank, Bracky into one of the other units, Hexcaster casting weakness onto the other unit that was heavily damaged to do 1 wound and then kill it. So I managed to delete all 3 in one go. So that's swung things a little bit back, and maybe I can get something out of this game after all. I'm running out of scoring units though. Immortal Guard don't kill the enemy Bracky. So I've only got the Immortal Guard and the Golems to score with now. But there is a 2-point objective here, which I can probably get to. So in my opponent's turn, double charge into the Immortal Guard, and the Hammer of Measured Force unit are on a 1-point objective, so they don't really want to approach me, because they don't want to abandon it. So Infernox is there as well, but there's other objectives he can go after too, I think. So they do some shooting though, because there's this Fireball guy with the diadem who's just dealing wounds constantly. And the Immortal Guard are toast. So this unit, I think it does say Eye of the Gods on the label, and it does have Blessing of the Gods. So yeah, they don't need to be too aggressive now because they're on enough objectives over there. So turn 6, and I found where my 2-point objective is that I wanted, and it's there, so I just move onto that. And Bracky kills a mortar because it's just worth some good points. And yeah, so if the game ends in turn 6, well, if it had ended right there, I would get 2 bonus points for the tournament table from holding that. If it goes to another turn, they might well get shot to death. Not much will happen other than that in a turn 7. So there is a turn 7. Ironcaster runs off and hides, so he's not going to get killed. The Golems just turn around to face any particular threats that might be coming, and I try and heal them as much as I can. They're on 5 wounds now. And Bracky goes and kills... Who is it? Who was up there? Let's go back. He kills the Ironcaster. So they're not going to be fireballed. So into turn 7 for my opponent. And what's that? A mortar, you say, that deletes my golems that were on an objective. Yep, that's right. And the Hexcaster, I think, cast weakness that may have done another wound as well. So they are dead. So no scoring units left, no bonus points. Ended up killing a decent number of units in the end. So finally chewed through that little battery. Bracky didn't really do his job fast enough. It took too long to chew through this. And the force I put over there wasn't really sufficient to deal with everything that was there. So what I'm thinking is I probably should have just ignored that flank entirely and just let them have it. Because my army does not like this mission at all. The mystery of where the tokens are. The only way you get around that is only go after the tokens that you put down, because you know exactly where they are from the off. And you can get a draw, or maybe slightly better, if your opponent didn't do the same thing as you. So they're all on tokens, and it's a loss. Moving on to the next round, and up against ogres. So this mission is push. So the ogre list, what do I not want to see in ogre lists? I don't want to see chariots, because they are faster than me and they hit very hard. So what do we see? We see hunters, who are fast because they've got the Brew of Haste. They only have Crush 1 though. They also have Pathfinder, which is useful. I've noticed at this venue there is a lot of difficult terrain, so Pathfinder and Strider are very, very valuable here. And I'm about to sneeze, so I'll mute the microphone. Okay, I bet you're grateful you didn't have to hear that. So, we've got 3 hordes of boomers, and as soon as I see that I'm thinking, oh no, it's going to be the decimators all over again. Because ogre boomers, very similar type of unit, but maybe better because they're better at fighting. There is a mammoth, which is the big deal, which brutal 2 it has. So, I was saying earlier that brutal and dread and cloak of death rules I really don't want to see when I'm using my big defense 6 wall, because they don't care what your defense is. your nerve is worse, or you just lose a point of damage without your defense coming into it at all. So not only does it have Brutal 2, it can hand out Brutal 2 to another nearby unit, so obviously terrifying. Crocodile Wrangler, another unit that I think is very good. I think it's quite underrated actually. Being able to charge through ogres is good. You can keep it safe, and it also has Duelist, I think. Yeah, so it's a good, possibly Bracky or Ironcaster hunting unit, and it hits fairly hard. There is a Red Goblin Slasher, 2 of them in fact, and one of them has an Aura of Fury for goblins only. There are 2 Ogre Warlocks with Lightning Bolt and Drain Life, and Lightning Bolt, Drain Life and Scorched Earth, so we're going to be scorching each other's earth here. Then there is Nomagorok with Bane Chant, Heal and Lightning Bolt. So, side note on Ogres and Bane Chant. They're one of the few armies who, because they get their bonuses to casting from being near their own units. I think Orcs do that as well, but you can end up with like Bane Chant 6. And I think that's a spell you only need 1 success and it's done. Why is there ever an occasion for you to be rolling 6 dice at Bane Chant? It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. And I was thinking, what changes would I make to Bane Chant then? If it wants to be a spell that you have a lot of dice for, how would I change it? And possibly, if you get a different number of successes, it has different effects on you. So you might have to increase the number of dice certain other factions got with their Bane Chants if this is how it became. So, for example, you need 2 successes to give them the +1 crushing strength. Maybe if you get 1 success, it gives them an extra attack. If you get 3 successes, it gives them crushing strength and an extra attack. So something along those lines, because it just seems weird that you can have that many dice for something that you only need to succeed with once and it doesn't accumulate in power in any way. And then there is Cuzlo and Madfall, so the sticky-tongued lizard, who also lowers your nerve as well. So there's a lot of nerve lowering going on here. One thing I'm pleased for, there is not a huge amount of speed. There's a few fast-ish units, but not a lot. So I'm pleased about that. And for push, where do you think my tokens are going? Which unit would you say is the prime candidate for carrying tokens in the Abyssal Dwarf army? If you said golems, then sometimes that might be a good choice, but of course you can't be surged. You can drop them, of course, before surging, so definitely an option. If you said Immortal Guard, then you are 100% correct, because the Immortal Guard, enemy chaff are not going to be able to do anything to them. So if you put them on their own, out on a flank, that is significant resources the enemy needs to go after them. You can't just send a unit of gargoyles after Immortal Guard and expect them to stop them in their tracks. Ain't gonna happen. You need something good. So, the Immortal Guard are over there with my 2 tokens, all the way out on the right flank. I've got the Grotesques there with the hill, so they are there kind of to protect their advance. So nothing is going to go through this area without the Grotesques dealing with it. So that's just going to score me points. The other token in the middle is where everyone else is focused, so all my golems, all 4 units are going straight for that token. My flyer is going to look and try to get some kind of flank action going on, being wary of Cuzlo there. So, let's see how the enemy unit is set up. So we've got the Crocodile there behind the forest, 2 slashers, boomers, and mages, the big deal there, and the hunters, and then Cuzlo all the way out there on his own. You don't want him near your own troops because he also lowers your nerve, I think. So, cinematic gargoyle wing shot there. And so I took a quick picture of my dice set up here in case anyone's not seen that before. So the wound dice and my 3 piles of rolling dice for damaging and hitting and whatnot. So yeah, they're in piles of 10. So if I'm rolling for the golems, I just grab 2 piles and leave 2 dice behind to get 18. So it just makes things nice and quick. And then every time I get some new dice, they become, 2 of them become a new set of nerve test dice. So I've got to quite a few now. So if some of them are underperforming, they get pushed to the back of the line and a different set of dice come out. So I try and roll a different one each time. And if some of them are performing particularly well, they might stay in for a while. So turn 1 for my opponent, who chooses to go first. And with push, that can be a good move because you get the tokens forward and get closer to the one in the middle. So Cuzlo's staying out of my charge range at this point, I think, as the Overmaster would make mincemeat of him. The Hunters get over the wall. And everyone else, there's no need to be too aggressive because they've got a good little firing area there. If I just walk straight towards this token, I'm going to get shot to death. Slashers set up there in the woods so they can shoot at my Immortal Guard over the hill and do a couple of wounds. You can see the 2 tokens in that unit. 3 damage done to the Greater Golem from some shooting as well. It might have been Lightning Bolt that did that. And turn 1 for me. So, we have got my big flyer there on the left. I've advanced a little bit onto Cuzlo. So he's going to have to rethink his life a bit. I've tried to find the perfect position so he can't get past me and into a spot where I can't see him. So all he can do is either run away or stay in my charge arc. Or have another unit come and support, which would be great because they're faced away from the action. Now you may notice there's one unit of golems that are way further out than they should be there. What do you think caused that? Well, the answer is too much surge in their diet. So if you look over here, I pushed them up and I wanted to get closer to the gun line, and I kind of want to tempt some boomers to be charging in. It was a test, but no one answered in time. So I surged them, and I surged 8 out of 8 inches, which is not what I wanted. I did not want to surge them that far, because now they have too many units that can hit them for my liking. What I would like to happen though, now that they're here, is this unit to join in. I hope they'll be tempted to throw in all these units into one golem unit, because it just breaks up that gun line, which is, if you come up against this sort of list, that's what you want to do. If you have to lure them out, or if you have to send something in there, just try and break up the little formation they've got going on, because they're too comfortable there. They're behind difficult terrain. If I can get them charging out of it, then I can start hitting them with my units from the side. And once we start fighting, they lose their advantage of having guns. So hopefully they get drawn in. But I think this unit might be able to charge their flank as well, now that they've come so far forward. So ideally I wanted them to end up about here, which keeps them out of the charge range of maybe that unit and this one who are in the front. So this one is really tempting because they're all going to be hindered, but this one has the flank now because I've moved so far forward. But now that I am there, I would very much like them to come into the flank there, because it breaks up the line and I can start chomping on them. Grotesques just position themselves on the hill, just threatening, do not come near my little buddy Immortal Guard who are carrying the tokens or I will charge you. And Bracky is just positioning himself ready to strike next turn. There is some, I'm not sure if it's wild charge that's going on around there, but I think the Crocodile might have wild charge. Turn 2 for the Ogres. So, not all the boomers decide they are going to take the bait. We have the Hunters, the Big Deal, and 1 unit of boomers into the Golems. The Slashers shoot, and they do a tiny bit of damage to the Immortal Guard, but not much. So, the Ogres do make a bit of an advance, so they haven't totally broken their lines, but they have come somewhat off the difficult terrain. Now, what am I eyeing up in this situation? So, immediately, of course, I'll start mentally thinking, as soon as it's my turn, going to start measuring, see what this guy's in range of and who has got a flank option, perhaps. So this unit, maybe going forward and turning and then surging towards the flank of that slasher is something that could be an option. However, there is a wall there, so they would be hindered even if the surge is from unhindered ground. So, not maybe that tempting, turning their flank to Ogres. This guy, going to start seeing which of these units he can reach, because just charging at boomers, even in the front, probably a good idea, get them tied up. If this unit survives somehow, that makes things a bit easier. So we'll see. 2 wounds from the first unit, And then loads more from the other units. So, yeah, they're dead. So, yeah, they paid the price for being surged very far ahead of my lines. And there we go. So my greater golem being in difficult terrain isn't an issue at all, of course, because he can just have Strider and charge straight out into something. They start turning, though. So they've got, like, this little death trap. So if I want to charge the hunters, for instance, the big deal goes in the flank. So, not ideal losing a unit, but the plus side of that is that I have broken their formation. They're forward, they're mostly off the difficult terrain now that I was going to be hindered by, and they're not in a straight line, which is what Abyssal Dwarves want to see. You want to see the enemy with a jagged formation so you can start eyeing up flanks. So, let's have a look what I do. Bracky charges the Crocodog. Now you might think this is madness because the Crocodog is the one thing that can kill him. But I thought, you know what, Bracky could kill that in one go. If I get rid of it, it's no longer a threat, don't have to worry about it anymore. Save me the hassle. He's one away from killing it. So, a bit unlucky for Bracky there. Now, what is this madness you're looking at? Well, if we go back. So this unit are in this flank. Or is it the other unit? Yeah, it is that one. So it's this unit here. Now, I don't know whether it was just a charge straight into the flank or whether it was a surge, but they are in the flank now. So as soon as this isn't a straight line anymore, that's where I'm looking. That's where I'm looking. So my gargoyles charge into this unit's flank. Not hoping to kill them particularly, but it's going to disorder them and it's going to box in this unit as well. So into the flank, it's going to be hindered, but I'll take it anyway. And my flyer ignores Cuzlo and just flies up here and lands and stares down the enemy line. You do not want a flyer in this position, especially a big powerful one like this, who needs flanks and rear charges to get a good number of attacks. So the ogres cannot just sit there. They have to move or something's going to get killed, or they turn round and get hit by something else on the other side. So my big dude has not gone in because that was going to be death. Instead, he held back on the difficult terrain and allowed that flank charge to go in. Now, of course, I didn't kill them with the flank charge because it was hindered, but you can see I've built up some damage on the back. I think the orange circles are 5 points of damage, so there's more than 5 there. And the gargoyles in there, I think they did a little bit of damage on these boomers as well. So those boomers are boxed in. These ones are disordered, these ones are disordered. And we're right in there, in the fight. Weird, jagged lines, that's what I like to see. I like flanks being opened up for surges. We don't want units. We don't want enemy units in straight lines. We want to be able to get in there and get jagged. So, turn 3 for the ogres. So we've got a triple charge into these golems, which is, let's go back, it's this unit here. So those boomers who can't shoot now because they took a wound, I think, from the gargoyles, and the 2 slashers go in there into those golems. Triple charge, I'm not that... Maybe I should be concerned, but I don't think they hit obscenely hard, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility they could survive this. So there's a lot of hindrances going on there. I'm not sure if the slashers have Pathfinder. I suspect that they don't, but I would have to go back and look at the list to be sure of that. And over here, the hunters and the big deal double charge the front of these golems, who are on 3 wounds already. And these boomers go into the flank of the gargoyles to try and get rid of them. Now, if this doesn't kill the unit here, this is very bad news for the ogres because we've got this guy staring right at the flank. We shall see if it's going to be enough. So that unit's had Bane Chant cast on it, represented by the giant fist. So suddenly, it's looking a bit scary there. And damage is being dealt. Cuzlo pulls, with his sticky tongue, pulls my Overmaster on Ancient Winged Halfbreed towards him, which takes him out of charge range of the big deal and the hunters. So the only thing that's still in charge range are this mage and the boomers, who are of course in difficult terrain. So that limits what he can do next turn, but I've still got options. If he'd pulled me a bit further, he would have been able to charge no one. My grotesques have Scorched Earth cast on them, so they're going to be hindered wherever they go in next. And yeah, the big deal kills the golems. So another golem unit down, but I would compare... It's not exactly like a queen sacrifice in chess, but it's the same kind of idea. So you're giving up strength in numbers and a powerful unit for positioning. And with all the fighting that's gone on here, the ogre line is not in a great position because we've got a flyer staring into the flank. We've got this guy staring into the flank. So, nice upside down shot there. So you can see what I'm talking about here. They're having to face in all kinds of different directions to be concerned with different threats. So, of course, they're doing a decent job shielding there, these guys shielding the big deal. But this isn't like the solid kind of line that you really want to be presenting in general. Now, it did take 2 golem units dying to accomplish that, so it's not like some great master plan, but it's just the silver lining on the cloud of those units being killed is that there's a weird formation going on and they're being attacked from multiple angles. So over here, not much damage is dealt at all from that lot. And yeah, so those golems are alive. I would have said if that unit of golems died, possibly already game over. Because all my golem hordes would have been gone, and very bad news, I would have struggled very much to deal with the rest of these units. As it is now, it's actually looking okay. So, what is my plan now? The grotesques are going to go charging in, even though they are hindered from Scorched Earth. The Mortal Guard are going to keep just going into the corner. The golems are going to charge into that slasher, I think. The grotesques into this slasher. My greater obsidian golem has got a plan. It involves charging the flank of these boomers, possibly. And Bracky, what's a good role for him here? Does he join in one of the charges on these? Well, what I would note as a big threat is this unit of boomers here. I've got nothing to hit them with at the moment. So Bracky is going to pivot so he can see them and then charge this unit of boomers. He'll be hindered, but he just needs to do 1 wound to stop them shooting next turn. So that's going to be his job, and then my flyer is going to fly in from off screen and hit these boomers in the flank and hopefully do some good damage there. So, let's see how it goes in my turn 3. So, in comes the flyer, kills the boomers. In goes Bracky, wounds the boomers. So that bit's going well. And what's this? My Great Obsidian Golem obliterated that unit in the flank and killed one of the slashers. So that is pretty much perfect. One of them is still alive, but if you look at how this battlefield was a moment ago, look at this. That unit's gone, and now I've got a big powerful unit in here. This unit's now disordered, and 2 of these units are dead. So, very nice. I think it's actually this one that's alive, because the grotesques were hindered by the Scorched Earth. That's why it's alive, so these 2 are dead. So I can't remember if the Greater Golem actually had a direct sight onto their flank, or whether I had to surge him in there, but he made it regardless. So I've got 2 surge casters, remember, with 8 each, and one of them has a reroll as well. So, it's looking very healthy now, suddenly. And, yeah, from looking really, really bad and looking like it could have been game over if 1 more unit of golems had died, it suddenly is looking kind of in my favour. The big deal is still alive, which is a big deal. So, turn 4... That was my turn 4, I think. Now we're on turn 5 for the ogres. So, the boomers that were disordered by Bracky have to charge into something, so they go after the Overmaster. The Crocodile chases after Bracky and has another go at him. The big deal goes after the Greater Golems, that's going to be a good slugfest. And the Slasher countercharges the Grotesques, but it's not going to kill them in 1 round, and then it's going to get flanked. So that Slasher's on borrowed time at the moment. But whichever one you countercharge, something's flanking you, so there's no real good choice there, sadly. And Cuzlo just gets into position to join in the fight shortly. And so you can see who's got tokens as well now. So this unit's got 1. This unit has got 1. Let me just go back. So the token in the middle is there. No one's picked that up yet. Flyer's got one that he stole off these boomers, and that unit has one as well, and mine are running off into the corner. So I'm definitely winning, because remember, this is push, so the fight's taking place just inside my opponent's half of the table, which is what you want on push, because even if you end up losing, those tokens are not in your half, so they're not going to be worth as much. So those two tokens are definitely going to be scoring for me, because what's going to chase me? The Crocodog's going after Bracky, so that's not coming after me. So they're just going to score me 4 victory points on their own, and then we're just fighting over the other tokens in the middle here, which is great. So these two have one, and there's one just on the ground. So these golems, I think they get Scorched Earth, that might be representing there. And Bracky gets wavered by the Crocodog, which is okay because he's still alive, but not the greatest. Could have done with his attacks next turn. And the big deal only does 3 wounds to the golem, so I would say big deal. The hunters, who did they kill? Let's go back. They killed the Hexcaster. So they obviously had enough of being weakened and hexed and decided they were going to kill him. And then turned to face this way, so they're a big threat now. But I've still got Scorched Earth and I've still got healing. The boomers do not kill my Overmaster. They do some decent damage though. And when you see a spellcaster nearby a combat, they're probably doing Drain Life beforehand and then putting the wounds back on the unit. I think Drain Life is a very, very powerful spell, by the way. So some damage on the Grotesques, but not enough to worry them. So still looking good. What's going to happen now? Countercharge there. Charge in the flanks, so we'll kill the Slasher. They run a bit further. My Flyer has a go at trying to kill them. And if I can't accomplish it, maybe get rear charged by Cuzlo, which could be bad, but not much you can do about it at this point. It's, as far as the tokens go, where is the other one? Did the big deal land on it? Yeah, when the big deal charged into my golem, it picked up the other token. So the big deal has 1, the boomers have 1, the Overmaster has 1, and the Immortal Guard have 2. That one is in the enemy half, in my position, so are those 2. These 2 are not wholly within my half, so they're not scoring very much. Turn 5 for me. So, counter. Counter. Back away with Bracky, while he regenerates some wounds, and murder the Slasher with the double charge there, of course. And move further into the corner with the Immortal Guard, carrying the 2 push tokens. And there we go, so the Greater Golem does not kill the big deal. I think I attempt to put Scorched Earth on something. I can't remember which unit it is. It might be the Hunters, because I think they have Pathfinders. They could normally ignore this bit of difficult terrain. So turn 5, turn 6 for the Ogres now. So last chance, Cuzlo goes in there. So double charge. The big deal and the hunters go into the greater golem. The boomers actually move back. I don't think they go... Yeah, they do back up. They don't go into combat. So the grotesques take some lightning bolt damage from this guy. This could be Nomagorok. And the Crocodog Wrangler finishes off Bracky. No! The golem takes some wounds. The Overmaster is killed and drops a token. And oh yeah, because so you'll notice that the token isn't visible in the shot here because in the previous turn he dropped it because he knew he was about to get rear charged and killed, so he just dropped the token before countercharging. So it's just on the ground, so the enemy have to try and overrun to pick it up, which they do. So Cuzlo picks up the token, and look at all that damage, and it's dead, of course. So the Greater Obsidian Golem is dead, and the Mammoth, or the big deal there, has a token still. So, what can I do about this conundrum now? I've got 2 tokens in the enemy half, so I've got 4 victory points. The big deal has 1, which can quite easily get into my half, which would be worth 2. There is this one here, on the boomers and this one on Cuzlo, who are currently in their own half, which would be worth 1 each. So it's 2, so it would be 4 each if this guy gets into my half. So I have to kill the big deal on my final turn, potentially. So with turn 6, what can I do to kill the big deal? The golems can't get there, they don't have the angle. They are going to have to steam out the way as fast as they can, because the grotesques, we determined that the only way the grotesques can reach the big deal, with the angles involved, is that if the golems completely move out the way, and then the grotesques can get in there, into the side of the big deal. Because what he wanted to do was, when these guys reform and face that way, the big deal sidestepped, but he only rolled a 1. So if he'd rolled a 2, it would have been impossible. But because of the angles involved here, I think it's hard to tell on this picture exactly, because like they're hanging down off the hill and everything. But the golems out the way, we determined that the grotesques are able to charge into and just about touch the big deal. So let's find out if they can do it on turn 6. Yes. So they kill the big deal, take the token, and that's the end of the game. So nothing else of interest happened. The golems had to totally get out of the way. So because the big deal was mostly in my half, or he may have been entirely at that point actually already. So it could have just been a draw if they hadn't killed him. So it managed to turn it with the last action of the game into a win. So it is a win. It's a bit of a bloodbath either way. Lots of stuff got killed. But with the... I always had the advantage. It was never looking like a loss. And there was that one point it was looking like it could be a loss, when the golems were started to die. If all 3 golem units had died, it would have been looking a bit dicey. But the Immortal Guard were always doing their job in the corner with the 2 objectives, so I was always scoring those, so I only really had to stop the other tokens getting into my half or hold 1 somewhere, and that was enough in the end. So there's some of the swag in the VIP Clash of Kings goodie bag that was slightly more expensive of the 2 ticket options. So I don't know how much of this stuff you get otherwise, but there was a Titan, nice t-shirt, mug, some little accessories, a coaster, pen, stickers, so all good stuff. And there were dice as well, which you may have seen being used with this Clash of Kings logo on. So very nice. Next round, Trident Realms. Now, this mission is... Can I actually remember what the mission is? Yes. So against the Trident Realms, it is hold the line. So the way that one works, it's 2 strips that are down the center of the table. It's like a mixture of dominate and control. So from 18 inches in on either side, you have this strip of control, and then that's divided into 3. The center of the 3 is worth, I think, 3 victory points, and the outer sections are worth 2 each. So, kind of like control, kind of like dominate, against the Trident Realms. Now, what jumps out at me in this list, apart from the fact the text is very small in this photo, is there is not a lot of crushing strength, but there is a monkey buttload of ensnare. So, there are 3 Ensnarer hordes who don't have any crushing strength, no access to Bane Chant, but they have Pathfinder and Ensnare. So they're going to be ignoring all the difficult terrains. The tables are just swimming in difficult terrain at this event. So they're going to enjoy that. Placoderms are a Phalanx Defense 6 unit. So they're pretty tasty. There is a Naiad Worm Riders with the Brew of Strength, so they're pretty hard hitting. They're up to Crush 2, hit on 3s, so we'll want to avoid being hit by them. That's the main danger I'm seeing so far. Everything else, just don't want to hit it in the front. Tidal Swarms, who are just your chaff that are hard to kill because they have Ensnare. 3 Nookers, who, they're alright, they hit reasonably, only Crush 1, and Thunderous 1. So they're alright, only 6 attacks though, but they could do a job. Naiad Centurion. So this one has a weapon that disorders you at range, basically, so that's the trick for that unit. There is a Thule Aquamage, who has a Sacred Horn for the aura of Wild Charge to make it larger, so that's something to worry about. And Icy Breath and Veil of Shadows, which is kind of pointless in this game. But Wild Charge on some of these units is scary, so there is some speed. There's some slow units as well, but the Nukkers are fast. And the Worm Riders are fast, especially with Wild Charge potentially applied to them. There is a Naiad Envoy, and with Bastion 2 to raise the nerve of units. And Riverguard Dambuster Sentinel with Enthrall 4, so another spellcaster with Crushing Strength 2, Thunderous Charge 1. So that's potential threat. So you can see there's a big bundle of hard-hitting, kind of compact units in the corner. A big wall of Ensnare, and then the Placoderms there. So, when I was deploying, I looked at the Placoderms and kind of forgot what they were, because they obviously don't have spears on the models. I think they're like lizard men, or they might actually be the mantic salamanders. But I didn't see any spears, so I thought, ooh, I'll put my cavalry over there and go after them, defense 6, because Brachy's got Crushing 3. The Grotesques have got Crush 1, Thunderous 2, so they're the kind of unit that could deal with that. Not thinking that actually they have Phalanx, so those might be the two worst units to go after him. But they may still be able to do the job. What am I going to do about this wall of Ensnare? Well, not a lot, because if these two walls meet each other, it's going to be very slow going, because they also have regeneration. So they're not going to do anything because they've got no Crushing Strength. I'm not going to do anything because they've got Ensnare. They're going to regenerate, I'm going to heal. So it could just be a big stalemate. So you need to find some way to break the stalemate, get someone to break their solid line, or dominate a flank and start to threaten the flank of the solid line. I do not think my flyer is a matchup for all these units, which is why he's not over there. I'm not even going to try to counter them. Instead, what I'm going to do is just turn some golems around and face this way, and try and deter anything from getting past them. I'm not going to waste my flyer doing that, because I want to use my flyer to maybe look for flanks, or throw in if I need an extra unit, because he hits on 3s, so he's a bit more reliable. If I have to go into the wall of ensnaring, then he could do a little bit of reliable damage perhaps. But I'm not too confident in being able to damage the enemy. I've got decent unit strength though, and you can see I've got it spread in the kind of areas where I'm going to score, and I'll have the option to hop into different sections as well. So if you're all the way out on the flank, you're really only controlling this section. So we'll see how it goes. If you're kind of on the line here, you can decide where you want to be later on. So, here we go. Look at that. 3 Nukkers. So I'm more concerned about this area than anything else. Those 5 units are the real danger, but they're all in one place, so if I can deter them from coming forward, that's good. Tidal Swarms just chaff, they're hard to kill. Gargoyles are hiding a bit. And the Gargoyles might be used to block up that side as well, which is why I'm keeping them back here for now. So, turn 1, my opponent is going first. I think he chooses to go first, throws everything up, stares down the flank, and some of them facing this way. So immediately laying down the gauntlet, do you want to advance? You're going to get flanked by my really fast units. So, on the plus side, I've got this house to protect my flanks, so I don't necessarily have to break my line when advancing, and there's no speed coming from the other side. So as long as I can protect this flank, I should be alright, because I'm the one who's threatening with faster units over on the left. So, yeah, nothing exciting happened yet. Turn 1 for me. Send the golems over there, got gargoyles behind them, ready to jump out and block anything off that wants to come this way. I'm quite happy to sacrifice the golems for the whole game, sitting there to stop the enemy, if it'll stop any of them from coming around this way. May have to be done. If they start coming over here, I may have to rethink things. 1 Nukker charging in a flank isn't as scary as it possibly seems, because it's only 6 attacks. So, we'll see. I still wouldn't like it ideally. Push everything else up in the middle, mostly as fast as it can go. Brachy moves onto the hill. He wants to charge this unit shortly to make a start on killing them and pin them back while everyone else moves towards the ensnarers. So I want to kill this unit because they're my gateway into the flank. If I can get the Grotesques and Bracky to kill that unit and then look into the flank, it's going to start rolling. That's the plan. Whereas my opponent is hoping that these units are going to be the ones that start rolling through my solid line. So I've just positioned my units in such a way that they're not going to be able to hit any of my flanks, basically. So they still have charges open to them, but it's all going to be fronts. And they're not going to be able to hit my spellcasters yet. So I cast Weakness on this Nooker and do some damage, which is nice. And yeah, nothing much happening yet. You can see the battle line being drawn here. So the Tidal Swarm just parks right in front of me, just to be annoying, which is what you'd want them to do, really. And this Nooker is hiding behind them, wisely. Getting the laser out to make sure it can see past in case it wants to do a move in that direction. And just a little bit of re-angling, but not too much. They stay in my charge range with Bracky, so I'm going to be taking that next turn. One Nooker goes into my golems here. So I think it's this one, or this one. One of them goes in. I'm not sure I would have done it, but it does cover your advance. So it boxes them in a bit. So I can understand throwing a unit in there. I don't know if I would have done it. But there you go. So they're in. What I was thinking was, even if I multi-charge these ensnaring hordes, is that going to be enough to kill them? Because I'm going to be hitting on 5s with pretty much everything. It's going to be tricky. So I'm not sure whether the Nooker needed to do that. I think he could have waited for flanks to open up. But I have to advance because the scoring area is like this, I think. So I think I have to come a little bit further forward. So there is some damage done, and who's got killed? Who is sitting there? It's the Gargoyles. They get shot to death by him. So, bye-bye Gargoyles on 2 damage. Standard Gargoyle move. Take 2 wounds, explode. Golems take 2 damage, which is okay. Now, could this have been bait, perhaps, to try and get me to look for flanks on the Nooker? Maybe, because that would break my line open and start exposing my flanks to the enemy as well. So on to turn 2 for me. I decide to charge into the Tidal Swarm, because why not? And I put, I can't remember if it's Weakness or Scorched Earth onto that Nooker, because that one's the big threat, because he's got a flank on this unit here. I throw in Bracky into them, do 5 wounds, which is great. And the Golem, the Greater Obsidian Golem, charges into these ensnarers just to make a start on them. They'll probably regenerate, but I'm kind of just pinning them because this is where I want them to stay. I don't want them pivoting to face my flank maneuver later, slightly. I want to be in their face now, rather than giving them the chance. The Grotesques are just ready to strike next turn. Immortal Guard, Golems just lined up nicely. Flyer just waiting for the right moment. Not going to throw that away. Wherever I put it, I had the option to charge maybe him, or them, or the Nooker, but whatever happens, I'd get charged by the cavalry, which is bad, so I'm just holding him back for now. And we'll see. So round 3 for Trident Realms, what are they going to do here? Well, we'll see if they break their formation, won't we? So we've got a Nooker into the Hexcaster, which is this one. So this was just a little bit of a mistake from me. I measured outside of range of the Nooker, forgetting that there was a character with Wild Charge aura who could actually make it over here to issue that aura to the Nooker, who would then able to make it into the Hexcaster. Now, I'm not too disappointed about that, because it's going to be a hindered charge because of the Scorched Earth, and the Hexcaster's defense 5, so you're probably not going to kill it in one round, which means the Nooker's facing this way and is no longer a threat, which is good. And with the Scorched Earth, though, even if the Nooker had got into this flank, they wouldn't have done much, but they would have done something. So decide that the Hexcaster is the best thing to go after there. And so, lovely upside down pictures. Okay, that's a bit more like it. So you can see that this Nooker has gone into this gap. Okay, wow. So yeah, it'd be very handy if these pictures were the right way up. So the cavalry, the large cavalry, and one of the ensnare hordes go into this unit of golems. And now is where I think the mistake is. So, you can actually see it a little bit there. So this unit, even though it's upside down, have charged into these golems. they're not going to do much, and then they're going to get flank charged. So the fact that my line was staggered means that this kind of situation can come up now. It's because they've gone beyond the frontage of their battle line. Their flank is now open to be charged by these golems. So that's not going to end well for them. So the tidal swarms and the other Nuka are just working their way around my army. And I'm kind of ignoring them because I can't stop all this stuff that's so fast and nimble. So I'm just going to try and kill stuff and block them off best I can. So you can see the clear battle line, but what do we like to see? We like to see these jags in it, these little jagged lines in the lines, which mean that I'm going to be able to get flanks. So the Hexcaster doesn't actually take any damage from the Nuka because it was hindered, so that's quite hilarious. Golems take some damage from the cavalry. These guys just take 1 from that unit, so they're going to get flanked by these golems. And they're also going to get Immortal Guard in the front, if that makes a difference. And 1 damage done to Bracky. So I was hoping that it was just going to be a roll across the flank, but because the enemy have decided to break the lines, I think it's going to happen a lot sooner than expected. Also, tell me if you've spotted anything particularly juicy. So, this unit of Tidal Swarm, instead of staying in combat, they have chosen to back up an inch. Because they've done that, they have condemned this unit to death. Because if they are up against my unit, I can't just turn on the spot because I have to finish a move an inch away from them. Or it's either an inch away or at the very least further away. So turning on the spot, I do not finish further away than I was at the start. But because they backed away from me a little bit, which you can't see here because this unit's raised on the little embankment there, but they have backed up. They can turn backwards, face this way, and then be surged into the flank of this cavalry. Now this is something that could have been blocked. Had this guy been further forward, perhaps, there wouldn't have been enough space for them to get through, or if the Nuka had been there, he could have taken the hit for them instead, but it's obviously just not something that was spotted. So they are going to be surged in there, so it looks like this next turn is going to be critically fatal for the Trident Realms. So, the golems do what they do, get surged into the flank and murder things. The golems and the Immortal Guard do their job and kill that horde. Over here, I think is that a waver on those placoderms? Either way, not killed them yet, but they're definitely on the way. And this horde is... They are on borrowed time, but he might not be the one to finish them off because I'm just waiting for these two to get through the placoderms and then they can get into the incinerers. My big flyer flies over the top and eats the individual that was standing out in the open and then turns back to face the rear of the remaining enemy units. So I'm going to have the option of a rear charge there soon, or charge into one of the Nukas perhaps. So, what charges am I going to get hit with now? This Nuka is facing that way. I think this one is facing that way. This one can flank either that unit or that unit probably. But it's only 1 Nuka, so it's looking suddenly... If we go back a second to happier times for the Trident Realms. So right here, this isn't looking too unhealthy for them. They can keep working the flank. I think if they don't break the line here, it looks a lot better. But the fact that they commit everything in there and then obviously leave certain things open, it's going to come back to bite them because it looks like a much more dangerous place when all those units are removed. The Nukas do go after my spellcasters, and you can see one of them's been either weakened or scorched earth again. And just counter-charging going on here. I think these guys might have Fury, so that maybe they're still allowed to do it. And those guys regenerate a lot of wounds. Tidal Swarm are just chilling out there. And a unit of Tidal Swarm flank these golems and the mounted hero monster into the front, and these incinerers into the flank. So let's go back and show you where they were. So it's this one here. They have a flank charge, which I'm not worried about because they're wounding on 6s. They probably won't do that much to help. And this guy tries to throw his spear at the Ironcaster to make him disordered so he can't cast spells, but fails to do any damage. 3 grotesque wounds taken. Hexcaster takes a wound, Ironcaster takes a wound and gets wavered, but they're not dead, so the Nookers are still facing the wrong way. And the Golems take 6 wounds, and they're fine. So this unit's going to get rear charged by Immortal Guard now. And yeah, it's looking very bad for Trident Realms at the moment, because my Flyer's also looking this way, so he's going to rear charge this guy. So turn 4, Golems into the Tidal Swarm, and everything's dead here. So I charged the big Flyer into the back of that unit, rear charged the big Horde, kill the Placoderms finally, and that unit is kind of on its own now, with a hero behind, and there's some scattered units around here. There's a hero, Swarm, 2 Nookers. So yeah, it's just looking very unhealthy. In terms of the scenario, by the way, scoring, I've got a lot of units in the centre right now, but this Nooker is suspiciously running away, almost as if he wants to try and claim this table section while I'm not looking, in case I forget there is actually a scenario going on. So obviously I've not forgotten that, because these units can quite happily turn around and go that way at some point. The Flyer can also get there. I'm thinking the Immortal Guard might start heading for that section if I've got enough time. But I only need to hold 2 table sections in order to score maximum points though, so I don't need all 3. Turn 5 for the Trident Realm, so Nooker into the Ironcaster again. And into this Ironcaster. And he tries to lob his Disorder item at the Hexcaster again. I think that one failed as well. Has the Hexcaster taken a wound? He had, so it failed again, I think. These guys are failing to do damage to the Greater Golem, as you'd expect. And the Hexcaster does get killed, actually. So he's dead. And a wavered Ironcaster, a wounded Ironcaster. So again, the Nookers failing to kill things, and then they're not facing in a direction that's in any way threatening to me. I can now charge those Nookers in the flank and the rear. So turn 5, Bracky kills the individual that was behind the Horde, and these 2 kill the Horde. And the Flyer went into their flank as well, actually, just for total overkill. So they're toast. The 2 Nookers are dead. There's this one here who can charge, and this one in the flank, because I kind of forgot he was there. I think he just blended in with the colour of the board to my eye. So I just didn't factor him in when I was turning them. And I'm just manoeuvring my units to get into multiple table sections in the last turn now. So on to turn 6 for the Trident Realm, and they take that charge and try and get rid of the Ironcaster. Kill the Golems with the flank charge, so that's okay for them. And turn 6 for me, charge into the little hero and just reposition my units. So I'm holding all the table sections because those guys are actually dead. That's just a corpse pile. So a big juicy win. And on 3 wins, 1 loss so far after 4 games, going into round 5. So 2 games left, and the video is 2 hours 8 minutes long. So we'll see if we can get this one done in under 3 hours. Should be able to, since I've already talked at length about aspects of the list and certain things I won't have to repeat. Next game, Northern Alliance. So what have we got in this Northern Alliance list? Oh, by the way, this is the scenario. I think it's Plunder. Yeah, so there's 5 tokens you can pick up on the middle line, and 2 of them are worth 2. So this is just a picture of the table before deployment. So my opponent went first and picked that one to be worth 2, and I chose that one. So the Northern Alliance list, Ice Naiads. So yeah, just a standard fighty horde with a bit of wild charge. 2 Pack Hunters units with bows. So they're actually pretty powerful units there. Human Tribesmen with Pipes of Terror, which makes them a bit more exciting. 2 Ice Elemental Hordes. The Ice Elementals have got a shooting attack, which makes them quite scary, but everything is crushing or piercing 1. I'm not seeing a huge amount of crushing so far. Frostfang Cavalry, so we see a bit more here because they've got crushing strength 2. They don't rely on Thunderous Charge, which is important. And they have Wild Charge as well, give them a bit of speed. They've got Chalice of Wrath in case I waver them. Frost Claw Riders, so not a big unit though, just a small regiment of them, so they're not that survivable. But a bit of speed. Snow Foxes, so some fast chaff there. Serakina, the Ice Queen, with some Surge and Wind Blast, so a bit of a utility hero there. Then there is this guy, how do you even pronounce that? Thane. With, I think this is... What does that standard do? Is it on the bit of the list I've actually taken a picture of? Telenar's standard. That might be a rallying or dread standard. I can't remember which one it is. Either way, it's just a little aura of some kind. So there is a Lord, and there is a Frostclaw champion. So that's the flyer champion version. So there are some units that can dish out the frozen effect in Northern Alliance, and other units that benefit when they're attacking units that are frozen. So that's the gist of it. So this is an army that is faster than mine. We've got more fast units and more manoeuvrable. Definitely doesn't have shambling units as much. It's got 2 and 1 unit that can surge them, whereas I've got 4 slow shambling units. These ones are actually quite fast for shamblers, 6. So what I was fearing is that I would have to choose where the first token is worth 2, because those are the only 2 tokens I care about. And if I have to choose which one is worth 2 first, my opponent can pick one that's far away and give me more of the table I have to spread across. So if I start, I'd probably pick the middle one, because then you can't go too far away from it. So whichever one my opponent picks, it's still relatively close to give me a small area to contest, but my opponent chose this one first. So I immediately thought, you know what, I'll just have that. Your arm is faster than mine, so let's just play in this area here and only get flanked on one side, which I can defend against, and not the other side. So I only want these 2 tokens, mostly ignoring the rest. So we'll see how that goes. Here is my deployment. So the Ice Elementals are there. All the flyers in that position. Got some Snow Foxes there. There is... all the archers are over on that side, actually. Which is probably a good place for them, because if you want a unit that's going to go and pick up a token and then not fight, it would be archers, because they can pick up the token from far away from the battle and still contribute by shooting. So they're probably a decent unit for that role. I've got Grotesques over there to worry them, but that's pretty much the only unit I've got on that side, because I think I deployed them there fairly early because I wanted it to look like I was going to have more stuff on this side than I actually was. When really I've got the big wall of defense 6 here, I've got my fast flyer there as well, I've got my Immortal Guard that are on a slant, so they're lined up so they can just go at the double each turn towards that token. They're the unit that wants to collect it. If I can pick up this one with golems and then drop it and then shuffle another unit of golems across, pick it up, then later drop it, and keep passing it down, and maybe get it to the Immortal Guard all the way on the end of the line, that would be good. And then if I'm holding those, I don't even need to worry about the rest. Bracky is there because I wanted something fast here as well, in case I want nothing on this flank whatsoever, but I also need to deter the enemy from coming down here. So Bracky and the Grotesques, and the Gargoyles are in position to come over and provide a bit of chaff support if needed. There's all my nerve dice again. And yeah, so I've got my casters, some of them hidden. Turn 1, and I'm going first. And just going forward, willy-nilly, surging my golems forward to get extra distance, get them right up in the enemy's face, because if I can fight beyond the objectives after I pick them up, drop them, then fight here, while the Immortal Guards scoop them up, possibly, and get away. That would be great in an ideal world. And you can tell I'm not too bothered about this flank because I've immediately abandoned it. My Grotesques have even started going this way. So we'll see what the enemy do here, or whether I even want to turn back that way. But we shall see. There are archers though, so you can't really take them out the game because they'll just come up onto the hill in a couple of turns and start shooting. But they're not that dangerous against my army unless they charge. I think they're actually decent at fighting compared to shooting, those guys. So I've put Bracky out there in charge range of some of the flyers. If they want to take that, that's fine, because then they get eaten. So they probably wouldn't do that. And in the middle, nice overview shot there of all the snow action. And a bit of weakness cast onto the snow foxes to do a wound from the Hexcaster. And wait a minute. Yeah, I don't think his position there is representative of where he should be targeting them from. Yeah, that's a weird camera angle, because I do remember he did shoot them. Okay, I think... Right, okay, yeah, I remember what happened. So, the Hexcaster was on the end here. He shot the snow foxes, and then I surged the golems. I think they've just been nudged, so it looks like they're kind of overlapping his base. But they are actually surging past him, because he was sitting between the two units, so he shot first. So I thought, what's going on here? They're blocking his view. But yeah, he shot first, then they got surged. So on to turn 1, and the snow foxes on the left flank have pushed right up there, outside of the Grotesque's arc, which says to me, Bracky could charge them. It would be something for him to do. He doesn't really want to throw himself into ice elementals right now, necessarily. So he might have a go at that. The archers do some wounds to the Grotesques. And Bracky takes some wounds from the ice elementals shooting. Other than that, not much happening yet. Bart says, Doggo wanted to go out last game win. Yes, won it with the... I'm not going to say with total ease, but it was a bit of a wipeout the last game against the old Trident Realms. Because they broke their line of ensnare and made some charges that I didn't think were wise, and then I ended up getting some flanks. So, what do I do in my turn 2? Gargoyles swoop into action. I'm going to block off the ice elementals a bit because I want to cover my advance and spend one less turn being gunned down horribly by them, maybe. Bracky kills the snow foxes. He is in range to be charged by this bird master guy, but he's not too concerned because it's not got that many attacks. He's on 4 wounds though, so maybe he should be worried, but obviously you have to declare what he's doing before rolling regeneration. And the Immortal Guard move closer towards this 2-point objective. The other one is here somewhere. So I think in the previous turn, or actually it might be coming up. So something happens that I'll tell you about in a minute, obviously. And turn 2 for the Northern Alliance. So the bird dude does go after Bracky with a nice upside down picture. The bird regiment goes after the gargoyles because it can see over the ice elementals. And yeah, I don't know how so many of these pictures ended up upside down. Someone needs to tell me how I can get on my phone camera and tell it to keep the orientation of all the pictures the same, no matter how I'm holding it. Because that's something that seems to happen. So I always go through the pictures, and any that look upside down, I then fix them. Or some of them are sideways. Okay, so the big golem takes some wounds from shooting. Bracky is still being hit there. Grotesques take some damage from shooting from those ice elementals. And so, Wind Blast is cast on these guys, these golems, and they get pushed back and they become frozen now. So that means that they're slower. Gargoyles get killed, of course. And Bracky gets wavered, which is okay because he's still alive and I can get him out of line of sight because he's an individual. And he's been hit by something with a small frontage, so he's not feeling too bad about that. So he's stuck facing that way and I can now move on with my life. Turn 3. So, the Grotesques. What have they done? Well, they've only gone and killed a horde of ice elementals in one go. While the greater elemental went into these... I can't remember what they're called now, these birds. So, did some wounds to them, but the real MVPs are the Grotesques, who murdered that unit, and then backed up a bit. And here, 6 wounds there. Bracky just backs away out of the charge arc of him. And the rest of my army just moves up. I couldn't get them onto the token. And you'll see now, because of that Wind Blast experience, I've now put individuals just behind my units. So I don't want to get blown back again. The Immortal Guard have picked up the token now. So these Frostfang cavalry are a big threat to me, and they're not involved in the game at the moment, which I'm very happy about. So turn 3 for the Northern Alliance. So these archers get stuck in. So this is where I find out they're actually pretty decent in combat, because I left that flank open to them, because Grotesques are taller than a hill, so they can be seen. And the Boids and the remaining Ice Elementals go into the Greater Golem, double charge. These guys get frozen, put on them again, I think. But the Wind Blast can also do damage, but it doesn't inflict any, because they're just high defense. And the rest of these humans, are they going to break their lines? Doesn't look like it, so up to 6 damage on him. The Grotesques are killed, so yeah, that unit does hit hard apparently. I thought they were just archers, but apparently they're pretty good at fighting as well. Yeah, because I think... Do they have the same rule that Shadowhounds have? What's it called? Ferocious Charge, is it? Do they have that, where they are better at hitting when they make a charge, and they have Thunderous Charge as well? They may well do, because they do hit quite hard. So there's still a very solid line that I'm facing off against here, but I'm not too worried because of the scenario. I've got the two-point objectives in my grasp. One is there, one's here. And you'll notice actually that the enemy haven't picked up any of the objectives yet, which I did find a little bit curious at the time, but there may have been a tactical reason for it. So onto my turn 4, and I drop the token with the Immortal Guard and go forward. So I decide, you know what, I'll just hold it with golems and push the Immortal Guard forward instead, because then if you want to come and get it off me, too bad. And the flyer is just waiting there, just being patient. If they're not going to break their lines, I'll just wait it out. And these golems pick up that token. So I've got the 4 points that I wanted, and my opponent is currently not holding any. Bracky, you'll see that he overran this unit because he murdered them. And the Greater Golem did some more damage to the Ice Elementals. If these guys, I think these are the Thanes, if they, or maybe they're the human, what was it, tribesmen. If they go into that flank, maybe they'll leave themselves open here. Let's find out. So turn 4 for the Northern Alliance. Is this the time they're going to fly out of their ranks and attack everything? Yes, so Mr. Wingy Dude up there swoops down and attacks the golems in the flank. And then infantry in the front. And this horde just reposition themselves a bit. So this horde is obviously, this horde of golems is under a little bit of threat perhaps. And let's see if they can survive it. So 3 damage done to this one with some shooting and spells, 12 damage done there, and they're deleted. Now curiously, my opponent did not want to pick up the token, so it's just resting there on the ground. And yet so it's almost looking like a tactical ploy at this stage to actively not pick up any of the tokens yet. So I don't know whether that's because there's a concern about the units carrying it being killed, or not wanting to slow down your own units by giving them the token too early. So I don't know. Maybe if my opponent watches this video, can comment on whether that's a tactical decision to not pick up any of the tokens yet. So the Greater Golem is taking some wounds. And yeah, you can see like there's a token there that's not been picked up. And there's one further back here as well that's also been ignored for the time being. So Bracky overran, by the way, after he killed those birds. Just up here. So turn 5 for me, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to start charging things. So this is an interesting moment. So what I choose to do here. Right, this unit is going to make a charge. I think they go in here. This unit want to be surged into this spellcaster. However, they're carrying a token. So they're going to have to drop it. Because this token's on the ground, I can't afford to have my opponent pick up that token. I need to get it now. So I'm going to drop this one, and I'm going to be surged into this spellcaster. Then at some point, maybe I'll be able to pick that one up, but I'm thinking, actually, because my opponent hasn't picked any tokens up yet, it's maybe not imperative to get it right now, because if I'm holding 2, that's still going to be good for the time being. And if I charge that spellcaster and overrun, I could get a double charge in them, and I would then be resting on the token and could pick it up. So that's my plan. I don't want to leave this here for like the bird to grab. However, what ends up happening is I cast all my debuff spells on this bird, so weakness and scorched earth, but then I go and waver it anyway on 1 damage. So I didn't even need to factor this guy into the equation at all, because I was also concerned about him swooping over my unit and picking up the token I put down, which you'll notice is why I've dropped it in difficult terrain, because he can't then fly 20 and land there, because I don't think he's got Pathfinder. He might do, but I don't think flyers generally have Pathfinder. So that's why I've left it in the difficult terrain. So my big flyer has gone into this horde, just to make a start on them. And my Immortal Guard charge and kill the Snow Foxes, so they're now facing down the Frost Fangs. I overrun, because I want to fight them up here, because the Frost Fangs, let's wind back, they're all the way up here. There's tokens at play in this area. If I can keep them pinned in the corner, and they only fight Immortal Guard for the rest of the game, then that's a good use of their time. So, that's the plan there. Bracky and the Greater Golem are trying to kill the Ice Elementals, but you can see, lots of damage, no kill. And I don't kill the Spellcaster after being surged into the flank there and dropping the token behind, so just doing damage. Now at this point I'm not holding tokens, there's still this one here. So turn 5 for my opponent. This guy's wavered. This one counters... Oh no, this one charges into the flank of this unit to try and team up with the power coming into the front here. From the... Are they the Thanes or the human tribesmen or clansmen, whatever they were called. And these guys on the hill, the supposed archers, who are actually really good at combat as well, charge in to the rear of Bracky. So again, there are tokens being left that aren't touched yet. So obviously you don't need them until the end of the game. So maybe that is in the thinking there. This guy gets wavered from a shooting attack. My Ironcaster there. And Immortal Guard takes some wounds from the Frostfang but don't die, so that's crucial, holding them up for a turn. And my big flyer takes some wounds from this horde. Not too many though. And this golem unit, is it living a charmed life on 11 wounds? It sure is. But it is inspired though. So you give yourself a chance by doing that. So in terms of tokens, where are they? We've got one there that's worth 2. That's worth 2. All the others are worth 1. And they're still in their starting positions. So I'm eyeing up this one potentially. But mostly I would just need to protect that one, take that one. That's what I'm thinking now. So Bracky only gets wavered there, which is okay because it keeps this unit occupied. And into my turn 6. So what am I going to do? My opponent is not in a position, if I kill this wingy dude, my opponent will not be in a position to pick up 2 tokens next turn. So if the game ends on turn 6, if I just grab this, so if the golems charge into this guy, then when they land I can then pick up that token, which is worth 2. The most my opponent can get to then, if I kill him, is to reach this one for 1 point. So it would be 2-1. So I'm quite happy with that. I've had to abandon this token, but I felt like these guys were needed in the fight over here. And that token on the ground, I couldn't afford to let that be picked up, so I wanted to be right there to take it. Unfortunately, I didn't kill that thing and overrun anyway. But, on the other hand, I did get a bit of good luck to waver this guy. Turn 6 for me. So, Immortal Guard back in there, do some damage to the Frostfangs and regenerate some wounds. Big flyer in there. I've got my golems, they finished off this unit here, and the ice elementals are also dead, and my greater golem is now looking over that way. Bracky is just staying there. And yeah, so these golems, when they charged into the flyer, which they killed, they pick up the 2-point objective. Now, and my opponent's turn 6. Obviously this objective can't be grabbed because there's nothing that can take it. This one can be. This one can't because they don't have the movement to sidestep there to get it because Bracky's in the way. Even if Bracky was dead, I don't think with one pivot they could actually move far enough to get it unless they're nimble. Which I wouldn't rule out, but I don't know their rules well enough. So, because all the objectives have been left on the ground, that's the reason I felt confident enough to leave this one behind. If my opponent had picked up both of these and also had this one, then obviously I would have tried to find a plan that relied on me keeping this objective and taking that one, because obviously you don't want to just charge into a deficit. So, turn 6 for my opponent, and countercharge. Trying to finish off Bracky. Killing the Immortal Guard with the Frost Fangs, who then overrun 6 inches. Wavering the big flyer, which is okay. So if we get turn 7, what am I going to do? The reason these guys have turned round actually after they killed the unit there is because I wanted to have the option to go forward, turn, and then surge them onto that objective in turn 7. However, because the Immortal Guard died, that would be a terrible idea. And the reason is these guys are alive. At the moment, they can't take that objective because they can't go at the double and finish in difficult terrain because they don't have Pathfinder. They only have Strider, as far as I'm aware. So that token cannot be grabbed by them. If I were to move in and take it, then they could charge me and then steal it off me. So I'm just going to leave that there because it's safe. Do we get a turn 7? Let's find out. No. So there's no turn 7, so I'm holding a 2-point objective. My opponent moves on and just holds this one in turn 6. And that is that for the game. So another win. So 4 wins, 1 loss going into the final round. So very pleased with that already for Clash of Kings. It's going to be a big scoring event on the rankings. And getting 4 wins, I should be pretty high up. Out of 148 players, expect a good finish with that many wins. On to the next round then. Now, this is Basileans. So this is a list where I looked at and thought, well, I saw the army out on the table first, and I thought, that's not a lot of units, that's not very scary. Then I looked at this. There is a lot of speed that hits very hard, which is the one thing my list definitely doesn't have the tools to deal with, I would say. If they can dictate the charges, they've got some small frontage units that hit very hard as well, so they're good for multi-charging. They're not just reliant on 1 or 2 fast, hard-hitting units, which I can Scorched Earth and Weakness. They've got lots of them. They've got an infantry troop, which are just fairly crummy little unit. 2 Alohi hordes, who are obviously very scary. Ogre Palace Guard, who are also scary. They're not quite as fast as some of this other stuff, though. Gur Panther Cavalry, so that's speed 10, which is obviously quite worrying. Speed 10 chaff. Then the really worrying stuff is down here. Paladin Knights, so 2 regiments of those, one with Boots of Striding. So they hit quite hard. Thunderous Charge 2. There is a Priest with Bane Chant, so we're already seeing lots of Crushing Strength and Thunderous Charge and a Bane Chant, which is what we don't want to see, with Conjurer's Staff, so it shouldn't fail. There is a hero on Cavalry with the Gnome Glass Shield, so defense 6 until it takes a wound. There is Julius, Dragon of Heavens, who is a hero large infantry, who is just a beast. Look at that, over 300 points. Because defense 6, flying, speed 10, hit on 3s, 8 attacks, dash 16 nerve. With various special rules like, I think it's Elite, Iron Resolve, very inspiring. Yeah, so just really good. I think it's got Dread as well, which is another rule that it's on the checklist of things I don't want to face with this army that doesn't care how high my defense is. And there is also another hero who is large cavalry. There's a bit of glare on the sleeve there. So more crushing strength. So tons of crushing strength and thunderous charge, and bane chant, and dread, and lots of speed 10, and cavalry at speed 8. So faster than most of my stuff, harder hitting than all of my stuff, lots of things that hit on 3s. Seems like a nightmare matchup. 20 unit strength. So, the reason that's important is because it's dominate. That is 1 more unit strength than I have. Now, you might think my army would like dominate, because I just want to sit my wall of defense 6 in the middle of the table, not move, and just win. Well, my unit strength is lower than my opponent's, and I'm significantly outspeeded by my opponent. So if I move into the dominate zone with my army, I will get flanked to death. So I don't have enough fast units to hold up the flanks. I've got this house. This is the only hope I've got, really, and all this difficult terrain. So if I stay in the house as a shield and stay in the difficult terrain across there, I won't fit my whole army into the dominate zone. So I will just lose. If I camp in the corner and don't get flanked, I will just lose. So I'm going to have some aggression here. So I've set up my big defense 6 wall in the middle. They're going to march into the zone. We're going to try and make things happen with Bracky and the Overmaster on the flank. Because there's some fast stuff coming down this side, I've put my Grotesques there as a bit of a deterrent with the Gargoyles. So hopefully if we get into a fight there, I'll do alright. But I'm not at all confident in this list with this scenario combo, because I have to concentrate my army in the middle of the table. If it was, let's say, control, instead of being right in the middle, I could put my army like this sort of area. So I wouldn't have to worry about this flank then. I'd only have to worry about it coming from this side. So I could form kind of a line like that and contest the crucial areas I was saying control are like here and here, because that's where all the different areas meet. So if you can be there, 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 or there, and you're scoring in different sections. Whereas in Dominate, it's just this one big area right in the middle. You have to be there in the killing field. So I don't like my chances. But we'll see what I can pull off here. So, round 1, my opponent goes first and takes up some strategic flanking positions, as you'd expect. And this is the scary guy. And there's some Alohis. There's so many fast units. Who am I going to Scorched Earth? The Scorched Earth, I think it's 18-inch range. I think. So, who am I going to put that on that isn't going to immediately charge me? Knights, but then he's going to charge me. Weakness is the one that's 24-inch range, so that's okay. I'll be able to cast that. Knights using a hill. So they've already got loads of Thunderous and Crushing in this army, and they've got hills to play with as well. Now, I did get choice of sides, so let me go back and explain my thinking behind which side to choose. If I chose that side, I could advance up beyond the difficult terrain and make unhindered charges unless the enemy is here. However, I'd also be in the open and be hit by cavalry that relies on Thunderous Charge. I need to survive, so if I'm holding a line about here, I've got difficult terrain on my side. That was my thinking. I'm just going to use the terrain and try and live and absorb that initial charge, possibly, if it comes. Because if it doesn't come, I just lose the game, or I have to move out. So it's one of those games where you look at your army list and you think, I've really taken a list here that in certain matchups, there is no reason for my opponent to engage until I offer them something juicy. Because why would they? Because they've got the speed, they can dance into this zone anytime they like. And they can hit my units anytime they like with as many units as they like, for the most part. So if I put like gargoyles in front, you'd have the chaff go in and kill them, get them out of the way, while everything else is just waiting, licking their angelic lips. So, yeah, it's not ideal, and it makes me think, maybe I could do with more speed in my list, or is it just like a rock, paper, scissors thing? Occasionally you're going to meet a list where it seems to have all the tools that are perfectly designed specifically to combat what you've got, but wouldn't be great against something else. Could just be one of those situations. So I move Bracky over here just to try and cause a bit of havoc. See if I can make my opponent panic, because no one's going to be able to charge him there because he's hiding behind the hill from the cavalry and the Elohai, who are the same height as a hill. And yeah, just forming a line, protecting all my units' flanks. The same kind of trick I used before with the Hexcaster there, because this unit's flank can be charged by the guy up on the hill, but with the Hexcaster there's nowhere for them to land and the Hexcaster can't be seen. So flank is secure for now, but you can see the circle is like this. So if I stay in this position, which looks kind of safe, then I'm just going to lose the game because the enemy will just move more units in than I can. So what is my opponent going to do on turn 2? Now, my opponent almost made... Let's go back to this shot here. My opponent almost gave me an amazing bit of hope, because he started moving Julius. He was testing out where he could land over here. And I was thinking, that is a really bad idea, because you'll get a Greater Obsidian Golem surged into your flank, and then you will die, and you've lost 300 points, and you haven't broken my defense line at all. And one of your hardest hitting small frontage for multi-charging units is now dead. So I was just staying quiet, thinking, if you want to do that, then I'm not going to say anything, I'm just going to let you, because I need to take anything I can here. But eventually he did go, wait, what am I thinking? And then decided not to do it, because that's the much wiser option. Because I think he wanted to create a bit of chaos, like Bracky's doing here. He wanted to start some madness going to break my defense 6 wall, because he's obviously not confident in his ability to bring it down behind the difficult terrain. So I think we both have got some trepidation going into this fight. I can understand it from his perspective, looking at a defense 6 wall in difficult terrain taking away some of his thunderous charge, and I've got weakness and scorched earth. So on paper you think maybe that's a good combo to stop these units from killing my stuff. But then when you factor in the scenario, I can't stay there because I lose. I have to advance, and that's when it goes wrong. So he ends up just positioning, forming like a little bus here to protect the good stuff. This guy's on the hill, so Bracky can charge him. So it's obviously Bracky bait to try and get him to charge. And I may well decide to do it, because Bracky could definitely kill that guy in one go. And he would be in a decent position and cause some chaos. I can get other units in there, get moving. So on to turn 2 for me. Bracky does go in. Greater Golem goes in. I decide, you know what, if I stay here, I lose. Let's make something happen. So the Golem goes in there. Bracky goes in there. I cast Weakness, I think, onto the Palace Guard, which is... It might be Scorched Earth as well, actually. And yeah, I think it is Scorched Earth, because if they make a hindered charge into the flank there of my Greater Golem, they might kill him, but I've got Golems here ready to go in. And yeah, just going to see what happens, because if I'm going to lose anyway, I might as well try and kill things and score more points. So, kill some units. Turn, so those guys are still in the flank, but I've turned, he's in the front, Julius. But if they go in the flank there and don't secure the kill, then bad times ahead for them. So maybe they'll do something else. They've got so many fast units though. But because he's here as well, it's limiting this cavalry. They can't get past, so they're going to have to attack him. And back here, I'm just not interested in engaging there. I'm kind of backing away and thinking, no, I'm just going to move back into the centre. So maybe I could have done more to try and initiate a fight on that side, but I don't like my odds. There's a wall there. So I've got the Boots of Striding, but obviously they're only good once. So if I end up fighting on a wall and not killing like the chaff unit and then getting charged off the hill by the knights, they'll almost certainly die. So yeah, I think it's just not the greatest matchup here. Maybe I could have done something different deployment-wise. But also, as I mentioned earlier, the tables at this tournament have a lot of difficult terrain. And I think they were very conscious of not putting too much terrain in the deployment zones. So you end up with a lot of difficult terrain in the middle of the table. And there's a lot less Pathfinder around now, because they got rid of the Caterpillar Potion. So the armies that did have Pathfinder and Strider in abundance would definitely have a field day at this event. There's a lot of terrain. So turn 3 for the Basileans. So just a bit of repositioning, rejigging, not being too interested in engaging. Double charging Bracky. Double charging the Golem there. So if he doesn't die, bad times ahead for them. If they kill both these units, it's only unit strength 1 that gets killed and unit strength 0. So that was my thinking of using those units to create an opening and create chaos. There's maybe a flank here, maybe a rear charge there, if it goes wrong for them. And it's not letting me go to the next picture. So let me just get up the thumbnail there and see what's going on with that. Okay, gonna have to crack open the photos again here. And okay, let me just find where I was. Okay, that looks about right. There we go. So the Bracky gets killed and the Golem gets killed. So it's not created the kind of chaos I was necessarily hoping for. I could still get some charges in, but the problem is the chaos I can create. If I could get, well, let's look at their final positions. I could double charge there. They'd end up hindered. And I think this would have to be a surge because I don't think I can see them. So they would have to be surged in. If I'm surging, it means I'm not scorching earth and I'm not weaknessing, which means the Elohai over there just charge in and stomp whatever's there in the flank. And it just looks bad. So I don't see how I can accomplish much from this position. Obviously, as it is now, if the fire alarm goes off and the game ends, I win because it's dominate, and I've got a few units in there. But it's not going to stay that way long. So I'm thinking maybe I should have had a different game plan. Rather than trying to be in the dominate zone, maybe I should have tried to confront the enemy outside of the zone. It's easier said than done because my army's so slow. If I'm out the zone and they run into it, I can't catch them. So it's tricky. It's just one of the downsides of this list. And you would think they would love this scenario. Against certain armies, that's true, but not really this one. So on my turn, I decide, you know what, my flyer needs to get into a position to affect the game. Rather than charging it in and getting it immediately triple charged and killed, I'm going to fly it and attack that individual in the difficult terrain there. Might take 2 turns, but I'll give it a go. Only do a couple of wounds, very sadly. And I just reposition everyone else. I decide not to start charging in like a lunatic, because these units are just so powerful, they all hit so hard, they're just going to kill whatever they touch. Especially if I move out of the terrain, so I just don't want to leave the terrain now. Gargoyles head off this way, because I need another blocking unit in this direction if I'm going to salvage anything. And the Grotesques start shuffling this way. I just don't want to fight there anymore. Turn 4 for the Basileans, so triple charge onto the Golems. And, of course, they're going to be hindered. So, we'll see. And a double charge into these Golems with the Knights and the Elohai. So if both of these result in unit death, at that point I would say it's game over. Let's see if they can do it. So I think this spellcaster takes some damage from the enemy shooting. And this hero on a Panther charges the Iron Master. And there we go, 2 wounds. Golem's taking damage. Golem's deleted. So these ones survive, because all those charges were hindered. Julius didn't go in, he's just getting around the back. And these Golems are dead. So just 1 dead unit, so it's not all over yet. So obviously I'm scanning the area, thinking, are there any nice flanks I can possibly take? Anything juicy? And probably not really. So what I can do, though, is get 2 Golem units into the Ogre Palace Guard. They're both going to be hindered, but you would hope that would be enough still. 2 units. The gargoyles are going to charge Julius, not because they expect to kill him, but because they want to wound him and stop him flying and hitting anyone in the flank, because they would die. So turn 4, the Immortal Guard as well can charge into the Elohai and ground them, which is important. So they do some wounds, which is good. 9 damage to the Ogre Palace Guard from the combined charges and doesn't kill them. My big flyer kills the Panther Lord and turns around to face the action. So I'm now in the game, but this guy is now looking at me. So everywhere you turn against this list, there are fast units that can just charge you from halfway across the table, and they do significant damage as well. So it's very difficult for this kind of slow, ponderous army that I've got. Obviously, I can be manoeuvrable, and I've got surge options, but only if you get in the position to use them. And against such fast units that can, like, with precision, especially flying ones that can land at different angles and block in units and charge units behind other units quite often, it's a bit tricky. So we've got a little defensive shape going on here though, that we are going to get flank charged by a few things, but it's definitely not entirely all over, because if they can start clinging on. I'm disappointed I didn't get more healing onto this unit. I think it's this one actually. How many were they on? 7. So with all my healing, I got 1 wound off them. I've got total of heal 8, and one of those is with a reroll. So very disappointing. Turn 5 for the enemy. So the knights, which are here, they go into the grotesques there. Hindered, because they already used their boots of striding, I think. Elohai and the archers go into the Immortal Guard to see if they are truly immortal. And Julius into the gargoyles. Now, the Elohai can't flank charge the golems because the gargoyles are in the way. So, they've got other charge options though. This big hero on a mount goes after the Iron Master. And so, here's what we realise. Actually, they can charge in the flank, because if all 3 units charge here, then because of the new rules, they will slide down to make space for them to land in there. Now, if the Palace Guard had charged into this unit, they would slide down to that position first. And yes, I think they could have done that as well. Yeah, maybe the Palace Guard did go in here, because yeah, based on the width of your frontage as a type of unit, that's going to determine how many you can fit in the front and how far physically you can slide and then have space for someone to land in the flank in that situation. But obviously the golems are very wide, so there's quite a bit they can do there. So I think all 3 are going into this unit. And some damage done to the Overmaster. Have I been calling him the Iron Master? I think I have. They should have a hero called the Iron Master, really, shouldn't they? They've got the Iron Caster and the Overmaster. Why not the Iron Master? And the Overcaster, who just makes it a bit foggy and cloudy outside. So, damage done to the Immortal Guard. That horde is killed. And they're just turning. So, it's not the worst, because I should be able to kill the Palace Guard next turn. They're already on 8, and I'm not going to be hindered this time. So then I'll be able to turn and face these threats with an unwounded golem unit, and the only things that could rear charge me are like panthers, which aren't very scary compared to some of the other units. So it could be worse. So it's still not all over, it's just looking very grim, because there's too many angles going on for these flyers, and I don't like it. Turn 5. So you can see my opponent's been eating up the time pretty well. Grotesques back in there, only do 6 damage, very disappointing. I heal up the Immortal Guard with some regeneration, and then they do a bit of damage back to the Elohai. Don't kill them. Kill the Ogre Palace Guard, turn to face the threats. Don't kill that guy, so he can now get flanked. Wow. Oh yeah, another thing. So, in this situation here, let's go back. So here. If these guys did not kill this unit, I think he might have had a charge into something. I think with his angle, there may have been something he could have done there. Not 100% sure. I don't think I ever got it out and checked. But maybe could have recharged the Ogre Palace Guard, possibly, if things had gone different. But they died anyway, so it doesn't matter. It's just something to eye up. Because he's got a square base, he can actually pivot and charge perfectly sideways if it's a unit he can see. So turn 6 for the Basileans. We get some rear charges into the golems as expected. We get some front charges. We get a flank charge into the Overmaster. And Julius into the Immortal Guard. Knights back into the Grotesques. So Immortal Guard dead. Golems wounded. Overmaster dead. Grotesques not dead. So down to 2 units. So at this point I think we heard an announcement that, by the way, for bonus tournament points you score 1 per unit, not per unit strength. And I thought, oh, so I could have scored bonus tournament points for units. So I could have avoided throwing away like a 1 unit strength unit earlier, because I could have got a tournament point out of him. So, yeah, so maybe I would have gone in with a slightly different mindset, possibly, if I knew I just had to have 5 units in there to score some bonus points, rather than unit strength. I don't know, maybe, because I was thinking that the unit strength from the golems in there, even if I get down to 1 unit, that's still 3 bonus points, I was thinking, but actually it's only going to be 1. So I don't know whether it was specified in the pack because I didn't read it very closely, but it was announced around this point, I think, because someone must have gone to the TO's table and asked, and then it was thought, I suppose we better announce it in case anyone else is unclear on it, so it probably was in the pack. So turn 6 for me. The most likely unit I am to kill are the archers, because no one else is wounded, so I countercharge them. Grotesques kill the knights, and I just plink away with a bit of weakness, trying to finish off the Elohai, but don't do it, and then they iron resolve the wound back. If there's no turn 7, I score a bonus point. If there is a turn 7, I probably don't. So there is a turn 7, my opponent just blocks off the Grotesques and tries to kill the golems. However, my opponent then times out. And I didn't feel too bad about that because in the previous turn there was loads of attacks going in on one of my units, and I said no, just double one them. So I basically saved my opponent about 2 minutes of time anyway, and he didn't have enough time to roll all the attacks against this unit, even with those 2 minutes that were saved from me just letting him do a double one earlier. So I think, yeah, the golems are obviously fated to survive. Grotesques won't get into the centre though because Julius is in the way. And that is going to be the final picture of the event. So it's obviously going to end in a loss there. Lots of enemy unit strength. A very, very difficult list. Once I start killing things though, once enemy units start to disappear, it becomes quite a steamroll at times in my favour, I've noticed. Once I start getting a bit of momentum, that then creates gaps. And once things are spread out, that means there's going to be more surge options when there's different angles going on. And so late game, if there's lots of units left alive and the battle lines have become fractured, that's when my army can start steamrolling. But 3 pieces of difficult terrain, right in the zone where we have to spend the whole game. Quite a lot of the enemy units have got Pathfinder, I think. Some of them do. I might just go back and look at the list, you know. Because one definitely has the Boots of Striding, the Knights. I don't know if anyone else actually does have Pathfinder. The previous game, there's definitely quite a bit of Pathfinder. So I might just be thinking of that one. But obviously, I've got only 2 units with Strider. One of them is only once per game. No Pathfinder at all. So, there we go. Let's see. Does anyone have Pathfinder? Yes, so the Gur Panthers have Pathfinder. No, so it's not that much. So this particular list, it wasn't that big of a deal. That's why I was okay in the difficult terrain, preventing the Thunderous Charge. There were only those 2 units with Pathfinder. But armies with a lot of Pathfinder would have really enjoyed a bit of an advantage on this sort of table. You have to be in the middle, and you've just got this triangle of terrain there. So, I like the amount of terrain on the tables. I think maybe some of it could have strayed more into the deployment zones for it to be spread out more. And some of them had more hills in the centre than others. So obviously not every table was the same. And you've got two ways of doing it. You either set up the tables as they are and just leave it that way for every scenario, or you do like a terrain map and hand it out and show people where the terrain goes in each scenario and then let them set it up themselves. So you can balance it specifically for the scenario. But overall, it's not too wild, just a little bit more difficult terrain. Large pieces of difficult terrain as well. Just a few more than you would normally see at this event, I think. So it's only on my mind because it specifically affects my army, because I've got lots of stuff that hits on 4s and no Pathfinder. So it does affect quite a great deal my army. Overall though, I'd say that's a success. 4 wins and 2 losses at Clash of Kings. That's pretty damn good. And I can exclusively reveal in the final rankings that out of every player that scored 4 wins, I finished lowest. Which is hilarious. And so there you go. So I ended up finishing, I think it was about 45 or so out of 148. Now with 4 wins, I would have expected to get a little bit higher than that. But it's just the way it's scored, obviously. Purely winning isn't the only thing that counts. You get points for kill points, which my army isn't that geared to do. And scoring bonus victory points as well, which in my wins I did get a lot, apart from the one against the Northern Alliance where I just got the 2. In the losses I didn't pick up a lot of points though. So obviously that dropped me down. But to be the lowest finishing player of all the players on 4 wins is obviously a bit disappointing. So that's still, when you look at the Clash of Kings leaderboard and you look at the win-loss, and you look next to my name and you see 4 wins, 2 losses, I'm pretty proud of that. That's pretty good. And I think this list definitely is good. It has its issues, especially when there's lots of difficult terrain, especially when it meets certain types of armies. So, am I going to stop running this list? Probably, but not because I think it's bad. I've just been running this for a few tournaments now, and I like to mix things up. The Night Stalkers might be due another run out, maybe one of my other armies. Maybe a different kind of Abyssal Dwarf list. I have got some different units. I can mix things up a bit if I want to. So we shall see. Anyone who's watching this live and wants to drop a comment in now while I can still see it, then do so, because we're going to be ending this video very shortly at 3 hours 2 minutes. That's pretty impressive amount of time. So on Friday I had an Age of Sigmar tournament all day, came home, did the live stream, went to bed, woke up, went to Clash of Kings, went home, went to bed, woke up, went to day 2 of Clash of Kings, went home, live streamed, after this go straight to bed, wake up in the morning, go to work. So that is a solid 3 days of non-stop gaming and streaming action. And Bart is clearly impressed by the showing put on at this event. Yeah, it was a good event all round. When the fire alarm went off, that was the only kind of delay, apart from there was one technical issue with the leaderboard at one point when the matchups were incorrect, which took a while to work out. But you can imagine that with 148 players, and you have to make sure the players are playing on different tables, they're not playing against their teammates on day 1, and they're not playing against the same person twice until nearer the end, if it has to come up. Then I could see why that would be something that could cause issues occasionally. So let's see, other thoughts on the tournament in general. Good atmosphere, all my games were really good, nice and sporting. And there was a dispute going on actually at one of the tables near me in the last round. Obviously I'm not going to start revealing player names, but I don't know if it was a full-blown argument, but it was definitely a rules dispute that was mildly heated, I would say. So there's obviously some drama, and you're always going to get occasions when especially if you're near the top tables as well. You're going to get instances of things that someone would maybe do on a lower table and the opponent wouldn't really care because it's not affecting too much. You know, like being a bit slack with a pivot or something, maybe not doing it 100% correct, but you're not going to particularly call them out on it because it's not going to affect much because you're not going to win. But when you get to the top tables and people are doing that, then obviously it can cause disputes. What else? The venue itself was very spacious. The only gripe I had with the venue actually was nothing to do with any of the gaming or the gaming area or anything. In the toilets, the locks on the cubicles were not really locks. They were like flimsy little stoppers that kind of rotate, and then as soon as you let go of them, they just droop and the door swings open. So they didn't really work, which I'm sure would have been irritating to quite a few people over the weekend. I didn't hear anyone actually talking about it, but for anyone who wants the Clash of Kings toilet review, there you go. I mean, they seemed clean enough. The water was very hot, coming out from the taps. So they did actually do an announcement warning people about the hot water. Any other Clash of Kings thoughts? Yeah, the organising team, I thought, were doing a very good job. They were all very busy running around, organising things. It was definitely a full team required. There was so much going on. 148 players, lots of tables, live streaming going on. That was a lot of work to do. And very impressively done, I thought. Impressively dealt with issues swiftly. And yeah, so what's coming up next for me? Well, in 2 weeks I'm running a Dead Zone tournament in the middle of Nottingham. If you go to my Facebook group in the video description, you should be able to find some info on it in there. Or you could just type Code Orange Project Tangerine into the Facebook search and you'll find it that way. If you're interested in playing in a Dead Zone tournament, there are still some spaces available. And that's going to be fun. After that, what do I have? Let's check my tournament calendar, actually, to get everyone updated on what tournaments are coming up in my world. So, there's Clash of Kings done. Got Code Orange, my tournament in 2 weeks. There is a Halloween Age of Sigmar event. The week after that, there is a Kings of War event. The next Birmingham Bull Run, which is the beginning of November. So there's a little bit of a gap throughout October, early October, so I'll be looking to see if there are any events I can fill that with. There is a Kings of War event in early December, and there is an Age of Sigmar event in very late December as well. So those are the ones that are currently on my calendar. I'll be eyeing up more events to sign up for as well, and looking for some in the new year also. So any thoughts on this list, on any of these games, on any of the tactics, on any of my issues that I run into with certain lists, any of the issues that opponents' lists run into against me? Feel free to drop them in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, don't forget to subscribe, and check out all the social media shenanigans in the description. There's Twitter, Facebook group, Discord server, and all that good stuff. And obviously, if you consider this channel to be the pinnacle of hobby and tactical enlightenment, then why not head on over and donate all of your life savings via Patreon to keep this channel afloat and to keep funding my outrageously lavish tournament lifestyle. Then why not? And oh, speaking of people liking the videos and such, there were two like celebrity incidents, shall we say, at Clash of Kings. One person was apparently starstruck to be playing against me, which is nice. And also, there was another player who just approached me and said that he was a big fan of the channel, and he'd come over all the way from Argentina apparently to play, but picks up some red hot, sizzling tactical tips from my videos, which is good to know. Because I maintain that until someone else higher ranked starts doing it, I think I'm the highest ranked Kings of War player who does frequent, in-depth tactical analysis videos of all my tournament games. So until someone higher ranked than me comes along and starts doing 3-hour live streams after all their tournaments, I think I can still make that claim. Deal with it. Okay, all that remains to be said is... good night out there. Whatever you are.